Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of the Town Council for December 17th, actually for December 21st, postponed from the 17th, to order. If you would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. By way of announcements, there's a couple of them today, but just to start out, the upcoming town council meetings, Thursday, January 7th is a budget meeting starting at 6:30. Before that, I'll just announce that town offices will be closing at 1 o'clock on Thursday, December 24th, and will be closed on Friday, December 25th for the observance of Christmas, as well as they'll be closing on Friday, January 1st for the observance of New Year's Day. So a budget meeting on January 7th, a budget meeting again on Wednesday, January 13th, both at 6:30. Thursday, the 14th is a regular meeting at 7 o'clock. Wednesday, the 20th is a budget meeting, and Thursday, the 28th is a regular meeting at 7 o'clock. All the budget meetings start at 6:30 here in this room, unless something else should come up. Do you have anything, Eileen, at this point?
Property tax bills are due on December 28th. Property owners who have not received their bills should contact the tax collector's office for a duplicate. Merrimack TV will be covering the Mastrocola Upper Elementary School Holiday Recital live on Tuesday, December 22nd at 7 p.m. Watch live on Channel 21 or HD on Roku, Apple TV, and at merrimacktv.com. Thank you.
A sad event that happened recently, the passing of State Rep Dick Hinch. And we wanted to take a moment of silence followed by some comments from press and from council and public about Dick, just as a memoriam. Dick served as chairman of this board for 3 years back in the early 2000s. And we've known and enjoyed his presence. And so if we could take a moment of silence at this point, I would appreciate it. Thank you. I'd like to take a moment just to remember Dick. We have a picture of him, a little memorial set up on the side here. He was chairman of this board for 3 years. He served on the ZBA, he served on many committees and things in town. He's been in the legislature for, I believe, 7 terms. He was just recently elected to Speaker of the House. It was quite an honor for Merrimack, as well as for him and his endeavors and his political career, to have worked his way up through that, and we were very excited to have him there. He will be extremely missed, extremely sorely missed. I got to know Dick when I started as a member of the Board of Selectmen when he was chairman, although I probably served on committees with him before that, on either budget committee or planning or something like that. But really knew him at that point when he was my chairman. He was sort of a mentor for me coming into the selectman's position. He's been a mentor for so many people. He's reached out and impacted so many people's lives that nobody in Merrimack is not impacted by the efforts of Dick. Most recently, his efforts on toll removal and things of that nature. So he's been a tremendous and wonderful asset, a smiling guy, always smiling. And I'm going to miss him. I know he was greatly impactful for this community. What I'd like to do is open it for anybody on the council or management if they'd like to make any comments about Dick and how he's impacted their lives. Nancy?
I'll make it very short and sweet. When I think of Dick, I think of 2 things, smiles and hugs.
Yeah.
He really was smiling all the time, and he would want us to smile as we talk about him. And the other thing is hugs. The pandemic wreaked havoc with him. because the first thing he would do is he would hug whether you knew him or not. But if he knew you, you were in really deep trouble because he'd hug you for a long time. And he really did have a hard time with the pandemic and not being able to. He would give the biggest virtual hug you could imagine. So when I think of him, I will think of those two things.
Very nice. Ben?
My first meetings with Dick Hinch were on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, I believe the second one. He was chair of that committee, and that's when I first saw the amount of amazing hard work he would do. Running spreadsheets and just, having visits to different facilities around the state that had transitioned to pick up and, transfer station and so on. And he was a hard worker, and I think, as Tom had alluded to, the whole situation, which a lot of people worked on trying to get things to happen, it finally started coming to fruition in the last few years, as we all can tell. But he was my wife's first endeavor into politics. He was extremely supportive of her, and I was very appreciative of that. And so he will definitely be missed.
Peter?
Yeah, I met Dick when I started with the police department. I was a patrolman, I believe, at the time, and he may have been a selectman or the chairman at that point. But as a young patrolman, you kind of see the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, and he runs into you and, a very approachable, friendly man, big smile, great handshake. And that's how it was over the years as I worked my way through the ranks at MPD. Always a big supporter of the police department and of the town. He'll sorely be missed, and I know the folks at the PD now know that as well, because he continued to be a great supporter of the town and the PD in general. So we'll miss him.
Bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, I'm trying to remember when I had my first real one-on-one with Dick Hinch. And I suppose it goes back to when I first ran for town council, when I got to the town meeting ahead of everybody, and Dick was there and wished me luck and talked about the ballot issues and kind of gave me a lay of the land as to what to expect at town meeting. And that set the tone for not just a wonderful mentorship, but a very wonderful friendship as well. And consequently, I think, like myself and everybody else here, he has enriched and touched so many different lives, not just here in Merrimack, but throughout the state, across party lines. There was a story in the Union Leader about going to the wake of a colleague's funeral in Peterborough, and he was a Democrat, and I don't think he expected to see Dick Hinch there, and there was Dick Hinch in the back of the audience, standing there large as life, there to offer support to a colleague of his on a very sensitive moment in time. And I think it's those types of anecdotes that's a testament to who Dick Hinch was as the person. And I think we celebrate the person that was Dick Hinch. But at the end of the day, we have lost, my thoughts and prayers go out to the Hinch family. They've lost a husband, they've lost a father, they've lost a grandfather, but the community has lost a friend, they've lost a mentor, they've lost somebody who is absolutely committed to public service, but reaching and becoming the pinnacle of, I think, of a House legislator, being elected Speaker of the House. He was a political giant. He didn't act like a political giant, but he most certainly was a political giant. And the loss will be immeasurable. So Dick Hinch is, nobody can replace him and nobody can succeed him. And that just about sums it up. He was larger than life, and we're going to miss him. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Lon?
I knew Dick as a colleague on committees, commissions. I knew Dick as a friend. I knew Dick as a very, very effective representative for the people of Merrimack. Godspeed, Speaker Hinch.
Absolutely. Eileen?
I probably didn't know Dick as well as some of you did. throughout my adult life, I have looked to certain people for the way that they conduct themselves, particularly in the political arena that I have surrounded myself with for so many years. And he was really a inspiration to me in what a kind man he was, and very effective. We worked together on the toll removal. He had the ear of the governor, who felt the same way that we do, very respectful of him and all that he does. I was going through a period of time that was difficult for me, and it required us to go into have certain medical things every day for a month, and we would meet each other with our Johnnies in the every morning, watching HGTV and talking, and I just, like you say, the smiles, the genuine goodness, not a fake smile, but that smile is so real and so true. And it's almost impossible for me to believe that someone so vital can be gone. So I will truly miss him, and I will remember the things that he taught me through his examples. Thank you.
Paul?
I met Dick in 2004. I think at the very first meeting I met him was a budget meeting, so this is kind of fitting. But from that point on, every time I saw Dick out and about, he'd always say to me, "Saw your wife running again. Saw your wife running again." Just smiling, and how's everything doing? He was very genuine, cared about people, cared about what you were feeling, and he would listen to you. Whether you had differing political views or are on the same side as him, he'd listen to what you would say, and he wasn't argumentative, but he would listen to you. And I think besides his smiling, I never got a hug. No, I never got a hug. I'm kind of disappointed, but he was the ultimate man and being that you would look up to and want to be and respected. Whether or not you were with him politically or not, you respected him because he would listen to you. And I think that's something I always take from him, is try to listen to everybody and be kind to people. And that's what Dick's motto was, to be kind to people.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the anecdotes, recently I was talking to him in this last year, and he was saying that somebody had approached him because he was minority leader to strong-arm some people to get the extra support we needed for some project that would affect the town. And he turned them down and said, that's just not my style. I don't strong-arm people. I work with people. I try and come to a conclusion with them and get the best for the community, best for the state. But I'm sure his style as the speaker was going to be like that. It wasn't going to be a strong-arm, beat everybody up, make everybody stand in line and genuflect the right direction or whatever. I mean, he just was the kind of guy that would work for consensus. And as has been pointed out, obviously smiling all the time and stuff like that. I'd like to take a few minutes if anybody in the audience would like to share some thoughts with us as well, to come on up to the mic and
I just want to say on behalf of the Merrimack Republican Town Committee, we've lost a cornerstone member. That was fine. We've lost a cornerstone member that, like you said, will never be replaced. But we will continue to go on, keep working as he would want us to do.
thank you. You need to go to a mic because we're being taped and.
Hi, I'm Bill Modis, and I'll be a resident of Merrimack 3 years this coming February. prior to Merrimack, we lived in Amherst for about 7 years. And I chair the Republican Town Committee for Merrimack. And when I was over in Amherst and I was vice chair, I was in charge of bringing all our guest speakers in. Never once did Dick ever say to me, no, because he'd always come and be our guest speaker and gave us an overview of what was going on in the city, Merrimack, and also through the state. And one side comment that I make to you, I brought this up with me for a reason. This is Navy. I served in the Navy, and he always wore his Navy hat, and I wore mine. And the issue between the two of us would be, the fleet's in, how are you? Have a great day. So we salute Dick.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and town councilors. For the record, I am Representative Maureen Mooney, a resident of Merrimack. I just want to add to all of your lovely comments just how fortunate Merrimack was to have Speaker Dick Hinch represent them in Concord. Dick asked me to give his nominating speech on the sports field at UNH, of all things, to be Speaker of the House. And one thing I mentioned was that he is the quintessential public servant, and that has proven true even now. His positive attitude and his dedication has literally touched every corner of this state, and the outpouring of love in the House and in the Senate and the governor's office has just been extraordinary. So Merrimack can be very proud of who it has sent to Concord in Dick Hinch. So rest in peace, Speaker Dick Hinch, and my thoughts and prayers are constantly with his wife, Pat, and his family. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Maureen. Is there anybody else that would like to make comments at this point? Let me just add that I did reach out to the Hinch family to make sure that they were aware that we were going to do this memorial tonight, and make sure, because they have asked for privacy, they've asked for people not to be pushing and crowding them. They realize Dick has reached out to the entire state and was missed, and Pat expressed her concern, I guess her sorrow, that they couldn't have a memorial service due to COVID-19. And that she plans to have a celebration of life service sometime in the future when it can be done. But she knows that everybody in the state was impacted by Dick. And we all feel sorry for the family, for their loss. We feel sorry for our own losses. But just so you know that we are all trying to be as sensitive as we can to the situation, both personally and politically. Anyway, any other comments anybody wants to add? With that, Dick, we miss you, and we will carry on in your honor. Thank you. Which brings us to comments from the press and public. If you have any comments regarding our agenda or anything with respect to the town that you'd like to make at this point, please come up to the mic.
Tom, did you want me to do that thing now or later?
I forgot about that.
That's
Yes,
okay.
please do it.
Do it now? Okay. This is really, as you know, I'm the liaison for the council to the Commission on the Environmental and Public Health Impacts of the PFAS chemicals, okay? So we have been meeting even through the pandemic virtually by Zoom. Okay, so again, with the elections, there has been somewhat of a turnover in the membership, but it's to our favor. We now have Representative Mooney, as well as Representative Healy, as well as myself. Representative Rung is still on the committee, and Nancy Murphy is now going to be the citizen representative for Merrimack, which is really good because she was the one pivotal in writing the legislation, which is the establishment of the commission. So it's a very well-done move. But one of the things I wanted to be able to say, aside from letting you know that Merrimack is very well represented now on this, is that New Hampshire DES and St. Cobain, because the MCLs have been lowered, there are more houses now that are eligible to be tested for their drinking water wells. Letters have been sent, as well as, not just Merrimack, but Litchfield and all the rest, to be able to do testing, and the response rate is really low. So during the Zoom meeting, I suggested that we, as a town council, might be helpful in sending a letter encouraging them to have their wells tested. because at that point, if the MCLs are high enough, they'll get the bottled water and perhaps down the road get hooked up. Mr. Wimpsat from DES said that he would be willing to get the list, send it to Eileen, at which point we could send the letter. He's going, well, maybe we can put your letter in with our letter. I said, no. I think it would be better if it was separate with the Merrimack stationery and just basically encouraging people to have, you know, that it's a legitimate, valid offer. We highly recommend you do it, but I know the town council would have to approve a letter like that being sent. So that's what I'd like to bring up.
Is there a timing requirement for sending that out? Is that something you want to do by the end of the year, or is that something that we can talk about at our next meeting, or?
I'd rather not wait till the next meeting, but maybe we could work on it, and we have to wait for the list from Mr. Wumstead anyway. So maybe we can, but I wouldn't want to have to wait for the meeting. And it'll basically be a generic, I'd be very happy to work on it, Eileen, with you. Just a generic meeting, letter saying, we understand that you're being contacted. We strongly encourage you to allow testing. And one of my concerns is if way down the road they don't and something comes up, will the town be responsible? I don't know. I just don't want to,
I don't think so, but
like, point of service.
I never know when you get to that kind of legal stuff.
You never know is right. But anyway, I think perhaps a certain population would respond if we encourage them to. So I'd just like permission to be able to work with Eileen to develop a letter.
Absolutely appropriate, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, does anybody have any problems with authorizing that letter be sent out? Encouraging them to go ahead and get their wells tested. So we'll go ahead and work on that.
And
Please.
You could just let me know when you get well, we can talk. We can talk.
Okay. Thanks for
you.
bringing that up. Sorry,
Thank you very much,
forgot.
Mr.
I also forgot to mention that Barbara Healy is excused tonight. She wasn't feeling well and thought it was more appropriate to not come than to come and not feel well during our meeting, so she's excused for this evening. Was there any other comments that I missed as far as announcements are concerned?
Thank you very much.
Okay. And I didn't see anybody getting up to make comments from the press and public? Okay. So we'll move on. Recognitions, resignations, and retirements. We have 2 long-term employees that we're recognizing tonight. They're going to be missed just for their experience, their knowledge, their value to the town. First, we're recognizing Becky Sullivan, retiring after more than 48 years of full-time service to the Public Works Department from September. 48 years, yeah. I was in high school when she started.
So was I.
40.
I was 3.
You're just giving your age away.
And she looks young. And
She
looks
does,
young.
yeah.
48.
She's been an awesome asset to the wastewater treatment facility. And to all, I'm sure all the different positions that she's had to have held more than that over the many years. So Becky, we'll definitely miss you. And she will be receiving a rocking chair engraved with the town seal, name, and dates of service as a final recognition of her long-term service here. Anybody have any other comments about Becky Sullivan? Secondly, we'd like to recognize our technology coordinator, William Chuck Miller, in recognition of his retirement after more than 44 years of full-time service to the Merrimack Police and the General Government Departments from November 15th of '76 to December 31 of 2020. Chuck worked full-time for the Merrimack Police Department for 21 years before retiring and accepting a position in General Government Department, working as our technology coordinator. Chuck has opted for a gift card in lieu of a rocking chair engraved with the town seal. And I have a letter from John Souter, the Technology Committee. Please convey my appreciation to Chuck Miller on the occasion of his retirement. As a member of the Technology Committee, I worked with Chuck on the town's IT issues. As we worked together, I grew to respect his dedication to the job and his willingness to implement the committee's recommendations. I wish him a long and happy retirement. Peter?
A lot of people forget that Chuck was a police officer for many years. Chuck I basically, when I became detective, worked for Chuck. He was detective lieutenant for years. He was an incredible investigator. He was involved in numerous cases, homicides, sexual assaults. He was involved in accident investigation. He brought an expertise and an eye for detail that nobody had in the department, and he taught it to a lot of us as he went. So, you know, Chuck was just a great guy, and what's funny is as we transitioned from typewriters and carbon paper to our first computers and stuff, and I watched Chuck, it kind of piqued his interest in it, and by the time he retired, he was full-blown into wanting to know everything he could about software and so forth. So it was a pleasure and an honor to work with Chuck in the police department, and I think he's really been helpful and been a great guy for our IT department, so I wish him luck again in his future endeavors.
Second retirement. Any other comments? So we wish both Becky and Chuck a great, long, healthy, happy, peaceful retirement, and thank them for their many, many years of service to the town. Okay. We have no appointments tonight. A public hearing. So the public hearing recommended zoning ordinance amendments submitted by the Community Development Director, Tim Thompson. The Town Council to hold a public hearing to consider recommended amendments to the zoning ordinance, sections 1, 2, 3, 4, 11, and 17, developed by staff and the planning board to address repeated ordinance administration and/or enforcement tasks, definitions, ordinance references, home occupations, dimensional requirement clarifications, travel trailers, references and modifications to ensure compliance with the state building code, signs, etc. Pursuant to RSA 675:2 and Charter Article 5. We heard about this 2 meetings ago and moved it to a public hearing. So this is an opportunity for a full-blown review of what's up, as well as comments from anybody that wants to make them.
Thank you, Mr.
Tim.
Chairman, members of the council. For some reason, my presentation isn't coming up on that screen, but I believe you can see it behind me. Did I blank? Never mind, there it is.
But thanks for coming out.
Thank you. Again, thank you. On behalf of the planning board, I'm here to present a variety of different zoning ordinance amendments that have been put together and recommended by the planning board to the council. Just to give you a brief overview, the sections that we're talking about. The first section will be section 1, where we're talking about clarifications and additions to the definitions in the ordinance. In section 2, we've got, again, various clarifications and additions. We've rewritten and reformatted the home occupation section of the ordinance, as well as a reorganization and update to our telecommunication tower ordinance. Section 3, again, is various clarifications and references to the new site plan regulations that the planning board adopted back in September of last year. Section 4 has some clarifications regarding travel trailers in mobile home parks. Section 11 is updating the building code references to the appropriate state building and fire codes. And then section 17, we have various clarifications to our sign ordinance. My plan here tonight is to go through each section, pause, and then ask if the council has any particular questions before moving on to the next section. As long as that's appropriate, Mr. Chairman, I'll proceed with that in mind.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Again, the rationale for these changes, sorry.
So this is the public hearing?
Yep.
So Tim goes through his process as he just described, and then we open it to the public, not in between?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The rationale and why the staff and planning board have put these ordinance amendments together for you. First and foremost is to address repeated administration and enforcement tasks that have been issues or require multiple, we've seen as issues that go to the zoning board on a regular basis. Secondly is updating, again, those home occupation requirements. The current ordinance as it was written sends things to the planning board under really something as a home occupation approval, but under state law, there's really no mechanism for that. So we've clarified that section of the ordinance to make it a conditional use permit process with the planning board, which is a statutory process that makes that clean in case we have any issues in the future with enforcement or regulation. Third is to update the telecommunications tower ordinance requirements. I know that this has been one of Councilor Boyd's items that's been brought up at council goal setting sessions over the last several years. Finally getting those all put together with these comprehensive changes. Updating the building code references so we're again consistent with the state building code changes. And then the sign changes again for administration and clarity. Section 1 is relatively straightforward. This is the section that contains definitions and the purposes of the ordinance. So the first change is the clarification under section 102E that basically sets forth a new section that tells you that the new telecommunications tower section of the ordinance has definitions in that section and it refers to that section specifically rather than trying to amend this section with all the general definitions. Secondly is updating the definition of my position, Community Development Director, to make sure that it's consistent with the town's administrative code. Third, to revise the definition of junk to make sure it's consistent with state statutes and clarifying specifically residents are allowed by state law to have one unregistered vehicle on their property. Fourth, to amend the junkyard commercial to a general junkyard definition, again, to make sure that it's consistent with the language in state statute. Adding a new definition and term for kennels. Updating the definition for the planning and zoning administrator position consistent with the administrative code. Then updating setback requirement definitions to clarify that accessory buildings are also required to meet setback requirements. There was a bit of uncertainty with that in the interpretation of the ordinance in the past. Again, next would be to revise the definition of travel trailer to clarify they do not have to have a permanent foundation and are primarily intended for temporary occupancy or travel. Eliminating the weight and length descriptions because those are again covered under state statute and include references to their being referred to as recreational vehicles or campers. That concludes the changes I have to section 1. If there's any particular questions or comments on that, I'd be glad to answer those.
So does travel trailer, do they have to be registered, or does that become one of the unregistered items you can have on your lot?
It's, in order to be recognized as a travel trailer, it would need to be registered with a proper license plate and registration. Otherwise, it would be considered an unregistered vehicle for the purposes of a junkyard definition.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Go to Peter first.
Peter?
Yeah, Tim, regarding travel trailer,
Yep.
Are there, and I'm trying to recall here, have you set any limitations on how long a vehicle can be parked in their yard or so forth? And
As of right now, the only section that I'm going to get to in a little bit is the section dealing with mobile home parks, given the typical size and nature of those lots.
Yep.
There's restrictions on that. But in general, the planning board during their public hearing did not wish to move forward with a town-wide type of regulation at this stage, pending any direction that perhaps the council would have for them to re-examine that potentially in the future. But I think the board, and Bill can correct me if I'm wrong because he was there that night at the public hearing, felt that that type of policy decision would probably be better coming from here than it would be coming up from the planning board.
thank you.
So you're just saying that there's no limitation of timing on a property?
On a normal
Residential.
residential property, right now, the only restrictions are in the mobile home park section.
Okay, thanks.
Peter?
Regarding the kennels,
Yep.
Tim, was there any discussion regarding, I see it says, it sounds like we're just referring to officially licensed facilities or facilities that are looking to be licensed?
Correct.
Okay, so there's nothing to address maybe those folks who run these kind of puppy mills or whatever?
It's not intended, the reason for the definition is right now, there is no definition for kennel in the ordinance.
Okay.
And we've had a series of different operations look to be located in either commercial or industrial districts in town. So in association with this definition, there's language further in the ordinance that makes this a permitted use in our industrial and commercial districts.
Okay, thank you.
If I may.
Go ahead, yeah.
Tim, it's, when it came to this yard setbacks, and
Yep.
it said, any principal and/or accessory structure, is there another location where it speaks to the size of those structure, or is it any structure has to be outside of the setback?
The structure definition still under building code, anything less than 160 square feet is not considered a structure and therefore is not subject to setback requirement.
Thank you.
Okay.
Moving on, section
Thank you.
2. This is really the meat of the changes. Section 2 is our largest subsection of the ordinance. First item is just a minor clarification under 202(1)A, clarifying language, adding the word "not" before permitted accessory uses. We're also looking to amend and add a definition, or add electric vehicle charging stations as a permitted use. There is a definition for electric vehicle charging stations in our new site plan regulations. However, there was no reference to it in the zoning ordinance. So we wanted to make sure that they're subject to site plan review when they're involved with a commercial or industrial development. However, they would be a permitted use without the need for site plan review if a residential homeowner wanted to have a charging station at their home. 202(1)A2 is the rewrite of the home occupation section, essentially setting up the new way of handling these. We now have what we call level 1 home occupation and a level 2 home occupation. Level 1 are those that are small uses that have no outside employees or generally anybody going to the home to conduct the business. These are like your online businesses, things of that nature. Those types of home occupations will continue to be allowed with an administrative approval from my department and the building department. Level 2 home occupations are those that are slightly more intense, that will involve a customer element or an outside employee, and those now will be subject to conditional use permit review with the planning board. They've always had to go before the planning board, but we've actually just clarified the language, and in particular have specified requirements that any firearm-related home occupation is required to go to the planning board, regardless of whether or not there are any employees associated with it. We've had several gunsmithing or firearm-related home occupations in the past that probably should have been handled in a public hearing, but they had been able to meet the definition, meeting only administrative approval. So we wanted to make sure that those types of things at least have the opportunity to be heard in public at a public meeting. Next section is deleting section language to refer to the new section 20261, which is the new telecommunications tower regulations.
Should I jump in now, or just
Sure, if you have
till
this-
get to the end?
sure.
I just was curious, Tim, on a level 1, why there's, you're not allowed to have a sign for your one-person business versus a level 2 where you are allowed up to 2 square feet, I believe it said.
Let's see.
I didn't know what the reasoning was behind that, I was curious.
I think it's simply because it's mimicking the language we currently have, that if you don't do a sign, you don't need to go in front of the planning board, and it was just mimicking that language. We didn't propose any change to that level of change, because currently, if you don't have a sign to meet the criteria, you don't have to go to the planning board.
Okay. Thank you.
It's basically, if there's external evidence that you're creating, you're
Then you
moving
have to
it
do the
towards the
planning
planning board level.
Thank you. Sorry about the interruption.
That's fine. Okay.
While you're interrupted, Peter?
Yeah,
Yep.
regarding this section, it
Sure.
seems to be quite a bit here, and I had some questions on it. Tim, is there, we recently, I won't identify the location in town, but this past year, we had an issue with a body shop being operated out of I think you're aware of the situation, but out of a home, and neighbors were complaining. Does any of this cover that type of situation?
It won't cover anything that exists at the time that these regulations become adopted,
Yep.
because they're essentially grandfathered uses under a non-conforming use criteria under the state law. Would prevent that from happening in the future. The automotive-oriented types of uses, we're trying to phase out from home occupations and requiring those to be in a commercial district.
The other thing is, one of the things I found as the year went on, especially when that aired its ugly head, was are there, for violations, are there penalties for these now?
Yes. Anything that's in the zoning ordinance is subject to fines. I think it's $275 per day from when the violation is noticed. It's same as any other enforcement mechanism under state law. I don't have the reference in front of me, but I know there's It's $275 and $500 for repeated violations per day.
And is your department tracking warnings and summonses given out for the violations?
We
of these?
very rarely get to that stage. Our preference is when we get what we call a service request submitted to our department. My staff will go out and investigate, review review what's happening there, make contact with either the property owner or the person conducting the business. And we always try to work towards getting the compliance first. As long as they cooperate with us, they work towards getting their proper approvals, we don't take them to court. It's a strain on both our resources, and we don't like to involve town's legal counsel unless it absolutely comes to that point.
And I can appreciate that, because I mean, I don't think the town, we want to be out there, you know, penalizing these people when they make mistakes, but my concern is when you have that person who makes the mistake or violates the rule, we go over, we talk to them, they rectify it. 6 months later, they violate again, rectify it, and we say, and now we're like to warning 5 and 6,
Sure.
and that has happened.
Mhm.
So
Generally, anything that we've been tracking, we have file folders upon file folders in our network that track each lot and what we have for service requests. So we do have a record of any past things electronically now, so that when my staff does investigate, we have record of those who are repeat violators, and those are the ones that we're far more likely to move forward with the legal counsel getting involved.
now, is there some, again, I ask this, is there some rule of thumb for you guys that you say, hey, okay, 7 warnings is enough, or, you know?
I guess it depends on the severity of the evaluation, whether or not there's a health and safety issue involved. That's generally the type of thing that triggers more aggressive action. But oftentimes, we will look to the town manager's office if necessary, or asking legal counsel for their advice before going formally into the court system.
Thank you.
Before you get started,
Sure.
again, I just want, you mentioned that with the gun shops, that they have to have that you wanted to be able to have a public hearing.
Yep.
But that's a hearing in the public, it's not necessarily a noticed in the paper public hearing.
Correct. It's an abutter noticed
A
public
abutter
hearing.
noticed
That would be
hearing.
under the planning board's rules, yes.
And the planning board always has openings for the public to comment. So
Correct.
if you see something that you want to talk about as a public, you can go to the planning board and.
Not unless it's an agenda item. If it's
Well,
an,
no,
yeah.
obviously,
Sure.
something on the agenda that
Correct.
you want to talk about. But yeah, I
Absolutely.
just wanted to make sure it
Yep.
wasn't like our public hearings here, which are in the paper and
Correct.
stuff like that.
Now,
Thank
the
you.
only time the planning board does the legal notice in the paper for a public hearing is when we do an ordinance or regulation amendment.
Right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Next section was 2021A3F, which is clarifying our accessory dwelling unit section. Just one thing that we've noticed in the last 2 years since we've adopted this. Just clarifying that an internal connection can be made by a common wall or attached by an enclosed breezeway that's not any more than 20 feet in length. Otherwise, we would consider that to be an external ADU, which requires a planning board review. And then the next few are all relating to changing section numbers and deleting language that now refers to the new telecommunications section. What I've tried to do with the telecommunications section, it was interspersed in every different district, a variety of different standards. So what we've done is eliminated all of those and created a new subsection, so it's all in one place. So a lot of the language you see here is just that, the renumbering and reformatting to account for that. The next thing we do is under 2022B, where we have a pre-existing residential use in a commercial 1 district, we now would allow those to go through the home occupation process. Under the previous version of the ordinance, you had to be in a residential district to do a home occupation. Granted, if you're in a commercial district, you can go through the site plan process and go through a full-blown site plan. However, for these minor types of operations where you are living in a commercial district, the board felt it was appropriate to allow for a conditional use permit for a home occupation. Then we add, as we talked about in the definition section, we've added kennels as a permitted by special exception in the commercial 1 district. And then we've added kennels, animal hospitals, veterinary clinics as special exception in the C2 district. Section 202D1, again, that's again changing section numbers and references to the new telecommunications ordinance, as well as 202.3D8, the same thing. Again, same thing for 2023D1. That's changing and renumbering in order for the new section. And then lastly, regarding kennels, we've now added them as a permitted use in the industrial district, and we've deleted the language pertaining to a 200-foot side and rear yard setback being required between those in a residential district. The reason we've done that is the new buffering and landscape requirements from the site plan regulations, we think, do a better job rather than an arbitrary number and distance. We think we'll get better results with the site plan regulations than mandating a 200-foot setback in the zoning ordinance. Okay, I'm going to skip forward to telecommunications towers, which is in your packet starting on page 2-41. The intent of doing this new section is really to consolidate, again, all of the various different areas of the ordinance that all referred to these in different sections of the ordinance into one spot, as well as to update the section to take into account new state law, new federal case law, and other elements of technology that have changed since this ordinance was originally developed well before I came to town, and it just happens to be one of the topics that I'm familiar with, having done my undergraduate thesis on the topic and have written multiple ordinances regarding this topic, including the first one in the state of New Hampshire back in 1996. So it's a topic I know a little thing or two about. So I hope that by doing this and clarifying the definitions and the new requirements regarding state law, that it really will help the system. The biggest change in this is the elimination of the zoning board as a step for telecommunication towers to be located in residential districts. Under the current ordinance, that requires a special exception and a trip to the zoning board. Under this new rewrite, we're changing that to a conditional use permit and an additional step with the planning board, because I think the zoning board and the planning board both agree that given the type and nature of the discussion that usually surrounds cell towers, the planning board has more tools in its arsenal to deal with that than the zoning board does. So we felt like it was better to do that and have a concurrent conditional use permit and site plan process with the planning board rather than that extra step of involving the zoning board. That's really the rationale, was to really bring this up to date. It was sorely needing to be updated, and it was a long time coming. So I'll pause there because that's the last of section 2. So.
I'm just wondering, is Bill Boyd comfortable and happy with?
Yes.
Thank you.
No, in fairness, I think years ago, having to go before the ZBA, you had to follow the federal, you had to play by the federal rules, which still frost my cookies. That the way that that Telecommunications Act of
1996.
96, thank you. You know, it is so draconian. It totally removes local control away from the process that I think, even though the federal rules have not changed per se, now I think it provides, moving it to the planning board level provides a much better forum. I think it provides for better dialogue, and then as opposed to having just a narrow focal point that if people have concerns, they're only allowed to make an argument based on federal criteria. Now coming to the planning board, there's now additional criteria that they can use to make a case and being able to get the best possible situation for abutters as it relates to cellular tower use and that's being proposed in a particular area.
If I could add to Councilor Boyd's comments there, I think one of the drawbacks to having the zoning board involved is once you get a zoning board approval, it kind of ties what the planning board can do.
Exactly.
Whereas if you put that power with the planning board to start with, it gives them the flexibility to craft a development that is better off for both the community and I think the providers.
Now, has the Telecommunications Act of 1996 been changed to any great degree since?
Through case law, yes, significantly.
Because that was my frustration back to when I realized what triggered you on that, is that in the beginning it made sense because nobody wanted cell towers, and of course now we all live on those things. So my beef back about 4 or 5 years ago, whenever that was that we did not have any say in the matter. It was the federal government, with this draconian thing. And it
Exactly.
really worked out to the benefit of the providers, because they were just doing it for money's sake, not
Exactly.
for a continuity of connection and so on. And that was a complaint of mine, so
Yep.
that if things have continued to change, and I like this new way of doing it, I'm happy.
All right. Moving
Okay.
to section 3.
Thank you, Councilor Rothhaus.
The first item under section 3 is one that, it's a tiny change, but it's hugely important to me as a department and as an administrator of the ordinance. Simply adding language to the definition of R1, that if the zoning map calls the lot R1, it's R1 regardless of what the underlying soils are. We've had multiple appeals of administrative decision on this topic during my 9 years here in Merrimack. And the legislative intent of town meeting couldn't have been more clear, that it was intended that these R1 lots, if they say R1 on the map, they're R1 regardless of what the soils are. So the zoning board has upheld the staff's interpretation of that a couple of times, but we felt that just adding the simple language of saying regardless of soils just clarifies that and cleans that up, and I think it puts us in a better position should anybody challenge this again in the future. The next 2 changes are simply updates to reference the updated subdivision regulation language. Then we have 2 sections that we needed to delete because they're not currently legal anymore. And we've again updated section reference. Section 305, which is our non-conforming use section, we're clarifying that any structure, not just a single-family residence, can be built on a non-conforming lot. The language there was a little gray and vague, but we wanted to make sure that that was clear. And then in section 306, which is lots without public sewerage, we're updating the references to the current Department of Environmental Service terminology. That is it for section 3. Questions?
So just so I understand, what's the importance of a non-conforming lot if you can build anything on it? What are you trying to say?
What we're saying is, there are still setback requirements for a non-conforming lot, but the way the language previously read, it could have been interpreted that the only possible thing you could build in a non-conforming lot is a single-family home, whereas there are non-conforming lots that are not in residential districts that would be allowed to have structures built upon them as long as they meet the current setbacks.
But in any case, to build on it, you still need approval.
You still need approvals.
Okay. That's what wasn't really clear, the way you described
It's just a
this.
matter of clarifying that language, because some people had interpreted that to say, well, I
It can
can't
only
build
be a
anything than a
house.
single-family house. No,
Yeah.
you can. You can still build a shed. You can still do those things. It's just
If
a
you get
matter of,
permission.
correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Section 4, which is our manufactured housing units and manufactured housing park section. This is that section that deals with the travel trailers. We've deleted a sentence in the definition of manufactured housing units to be replaced with the language in new section 404. And that new section specific to travel trailers outlines the allowances for parking of occupied and unoccupied travel trailers within a mobile home park, where again, we have very small lots with very little room for much of anything other than the house, the mobile home unit itself, typically. And again, the planning board, the original intent of the language being written by, this section was put together by Planning and Zoning Administrator Robert Price. We have had a fair number of complaints about travel trailers in other parts of the community, but again, the planning board didn't feel comfortable in addressing that beyond the mobile home parks, where it was a specific lot size issue that was very clear and made sense. They did not feel comfortable about expanding that beyond the mobile home parks at this time.
Peter?
Tim, I'm just reading this, and 404 travel trailers, section 3, it says, I could have my in-laws come up and stay in a trailer parked in my driveway for 30 days, is that correct?
That's correct.
No more than 30 days?
No more than 30 days.
Okay. And if they needed to stay longer than 30 days, would they have to go to the town?
They would have to go to the zoning board for a variance to that language.
The other thing is, I'm aware of one family in town, I'm not gonna say, but they have every year a very large gathering, and they must park, and I'm not complaining because it looks like they have a great time, but I'm curious how it affects it. They gotta have like 5 or 6, maybe more trailers all parked there. It looks like a family reunion.
And I think that's the type of thing the planning board wasn't ready to stick their nose into.
Okay.
Right, because you're saying that this. the
This section
just
It's
he just talked about
specific to
was a mobile-
manufactured housing parks.
Right, so in your yard, you can park there for more than 30 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
This is only
But
for
not
mobile home parks.
I'm just
occupied.
trying to wrap my head
Yep.
on that. Okay, thank you.
Everybody but people's in-laws.
That's
I
classic.
like my in-laws, so I,
Other questions on the two section 4 changes? Section 11. The section 11, there's a lot of red because there's a lot of just updated language and references that the fire and building department wanted to update. So again, we're renaming this as the Merrimack Fire and Building Codes. It's currently entitled Adoption of Merrimack Building and Fire Codes. This just references all the code and state statute references, updates the purpose and authority section, the statutory authority, the list of applicable codes, the list of applicable codes for 1 and 2 family dwellings, amendments to the International Building Code, adoption of the International Residential Code, amendments to the International Residential Code, test pits and perk test requirements for soils, sewerage requirements, dwelling unit area requirements, reconstruction of buildings, adoption of the International Plumbing Code, amendments to the International Plumbing Code, adoption of the Life Safety Code NFPA 101, adoption of the Fire Prevention Code NFPA 1 and requirements, adoption of the International Mechanical Code, adoption of NFPA 70, the National Electrical Code, and then the last 2 sections are for house number requirements and sanitary facilities at public swimming pools. All of these items relate specifically to the building department's codes and enforcement of mostly anything that requires building permits. This references all the codes that they will currently be adopting and referencing in those processes. This section was written by the fire department. I'm not the best person to ask questions on this, but if there are specific questions, I can certainly ask Chief Duke for clarification if need be.
I guess my question to Chief Duke would, if I might, sorry about that, I don't know if I jumped
Go
in
ahead,
front of
no, go ahead.
I wanted to know, are we making things more difficult or draconian than are required by NFPA and all these other, we're just
No.
pretty much
We're
following?
following those codes, and then there's specific Merrimack exceptions that say we're not going to do this, which is what was in the, is in international codes. It's basically making sure that it's consistent with how things have been treated. Based on my understanding of how they've written this, the exceptions and changes are things specific to language that specifically says Town of Merrimack or things of that nature that are blank in the international code.
Peter?
Tim, I see down here, on, what section this would be, it's scratched out 11027, penalties is now H. It says fines, penalties, remedies for violations, code shall be the same for Roman numeral, whatever, and then the RSA. Do you happen to know off the top of your head what those fines are?
They're the same as planning and zoning fines. It's the
Okay.
275 and 500.
All right. And again, and you may not be able to answer this, you may be able, is the fire department tracking these violations, warnings and summonses and so forth?
That I don't know the answer to.
Okay. That might be something like to know, see if we look back to see, you know, what we've done or not done, or warnings or summonses or so forth.
All of the blue ink on these other pages is just stuff that's been replaced?
That's best stuff that's been replaced, correct.
Okay.
What I typically.
Eileen, excuse me.
So, I should have asked Chief Duke to come here, because I didn't realize that we were going to be doing this, but I have been on him since he has been acting chief to do something relative to derelict properties.
Mhm.
And is there anything, do you know if there's anything in these?
Not in these code sections are specific to the electrical code, plumbing code, building code. The type of property maintenance code would be a completely different set of
It would
references.
be different, okay, so that would
That
be
would be
something
something that would
come
likely end up in
forward.
the town's general code rather than the land use regulations.
Okay, Thank you.
That's how I've seen it done in other communities. I know Rochester, when I worked there, had a separate property maintenance code that was under their general code of ordinances.
Okay, so if you happen to have some of those, if
can
you
find
would
it.
pass them
I will-
along to
I will
Chief
pass them on.
Duke, it
Sure.
would very much appreciated.
I can do that.
Thank you.
Section 17?
Go for it.
I had started mentioning it, I typically, when I do these types of ordinance amendments with the planning board, I use the Microsoft Word bubbles rather than the crossouts and strike-throughs, but I understood as the way the charter is written, I needed to do strike-throughs for you guys, so that's why I format it this way. Section 17. 1702 is simply a clerical edit. There was an erroneous zero and extra spaces in certain spots of the sentences. We've now added a definition for billboard and corresponding, because we reference billboards elsewhere in the regulations, but never defined what it was. We've added a new definition for the term feather flag, again, and a corresponding definition for that. We've done a lot of renumbering of the section because of those new definitions. We've changed the duration restriction, which is under section 1705-27 to a separate section, now in section 17069. We've now clarified that temporary and portable signs are intended to be non-electronic, but they do not include real estate signs or political signs. We just simply don't want to have these free-floating electronic message boards placed all over town. I don't think that really meets the intent of a temporary sign. We've clarified that signs installed by a governmental entity do not require a permit. We have new language indicating that real estate signs of a certain size do not require a permit and don't count against the property's total signage allowance. And the permission to display the duration where the property is maintaining sale, rent, or lease status, that requirement has been removed. Section 170610 is new language relative to political signage, basically referencing the state statutes as to placement, removal, and all things associated with political signs, because frankly, I want nothing to do with them. There is an attorney general process for that if it's on private property, and if it's in the town's right-of-way, if after a certain period of time, the Public Works Department has the right to take them out of the town right-of-way, so I didn't want anything else to do with them. It's a red hot button issue that just does not belong in my office. Section 17074, we've revised slightly the interval for changing messages on electronic signs from 20 minutes to 10 minutes. But we've also clarified that slightly again to say that if you have a time and temperature sign, you can change that every 15 seconds. The purpose for the long duration on changing signs is simply so that they don't distract motorists as they're driving. However, the time and temperature is such a minor item that typically that's not something that distracts drivers, as those huge billboards that change message every 30 seconds. Section 1708, we've revised the section and layout for all now requiring permits for temporary signs. The purpose for requiring permits for temporary signs is simply an enforcement mechanism. Now that we actually have a permit associated with those, there'll be no fee associated with that. It simply will be required a permit to be filed so that we can start tracking how long those signs have been up, and then we can enforce as necessary afterwards. We've deleted the language that talks about temporary signs being allowed within any 90 consecutive day period for clarification purposes. The new language now notes that no more than 5 temporary sign permits per calendar year per parcel. New language that temporary signs shall not be illuminated either externally or internally. And we've reduced the maximum size of those temporary signs from 32 square feet to 24 square feet. And then we've added, which I think was a really good move by the planning board, a new section that deals with temporary signage for special events. Oftentimes, when we have the Rib Fest or any large special events, any temporary signage that's been out associated with those things is totally against everything that's in our sign laws. So what we've done is create a process where if you're going to have one of those special events, you can coordinate with my department and the building department to set up a plan for how you want to do your temporary signage, and then that would be enforced by the department. So that we'll be basically legalizing what has been illegal over the past several years. Simple fact of just coming in a meeting with us, putting together a plan, filing it with our offices, so we know what to expect for the temporary signage for those events. And then our last two things are updating section references in section 171010C and D. We have new language prohibiting the use of electronic message displays as temporary signs, which I mentioned before. And then lastly, we've deleted and replaced new language that clearly explains how area of ground signs and wall signs are calculated. That's always been a bone of contention in terms of the math involved and how they were previously interpreted. I think Robert's put together some good language here that makes it easier for both us to enforce and for designers to design. If I'm not mistaken, that's the last of the proposed amendments here tonight.
Peter?
Tim, the electronic signs.
Yep.
Are our town's electronic signs, are our department heads aware? I think we have at least 3 electronic signs.
They,
not involved.
any sign that is put together, but say the police department, the library, any electronic sign that is placed and operated by a municipal entity is exempt from regulation under RSA 674-54 as a governmental land use. So
All right.
we are not subject to our own requirements.
All right, now, I know you talked about the political signs, but what I see is, stop laughing at me. What I see is, it drives me crazy is when these mattress stores, furniture stores go up, there are little sections of park, like over by Island Drive and everything, and they put up 8 or 10 of these stick in the ground signs and they stay there forever. Are those illegal?
Yes, and generally speaking, if we receive a request to investigate and we see those, we generally can get those cleaned up by Public Works because they're generally within the town's right of way.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Finley?
Since Peter's comment, I've always thought it was wrong that we, I get we don't have to, abide by our own rules, but I think it's kind of hypocritical of us to not do so.
Sure.
And we should do that. I did, in that regard, on 1707, I believe it was, we've changed it from 20 seconds to 10 minutes, is that?
20
No,
minutes to
from-
10 minutes.
20 minutes to 10 minutes.
Okay, where did I read seconds in?
Well, the seconds is written out.
The seconds was, if it says seconds, it was a typo.
No, I meant from before. What was it before, I guess, Tim?
Before it was, the display was in a 20-minute, the words, I will apologize, the second that's in there after 20 was a typo when we originally wrote the second draft of this, which should not even appear there because the current language is actually minute. So it's going from 20 minutes to 10 minutes. The word second there was my fault
So
in
it used to
drafting.
be 20 minutes?
It's currently
Yeah.
20 minutes.
That's what I meant, yes.
The reason we've gone to 10 is 10 is still a fairly long amount of time,
wicked
but
long
from,
time.
from an enforcement standpoint, it's the matter of me spending my staff time sitting there staring at a sign for almost a half hour waiting for it to change. At least in a 10-minute time period, it's a little easier to measure,
Sure. No, absolutely.
and it's still safe.
I always thought that the reason for the changing of the signs, it was distracting to terrible drivers.
Absolutely.
Of which I am the worst. But even 10 minutes, if you're at a traffic light, it's not, so, okay, if it's been shortened, I'm good with the
It's
shortening.
shortened from 20 to 10.
Okay, thank you. And that's just for enforcement, that's classic.
But you gotta be
Again-
going really slow to catch a 10-minute
You do.
change in the sign.
Yeah, I think 20 was just a little bit of overkill. I think
I thought it
10,
was
it's,
ridiculous
10 is
when I was
still,
on the board.
10 is still very lengthy.
It's still
from-
huge, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a minute would be enough to not distract unless you're going really extremely slow.
Yeah.
But anyhow, okay. So we'll open the public hearing. Eileen?
Tim, I would just like to thank you and Robert and everyone, including the planning board, who has been involved in doing this clearly. This is a very intensive and lengthy thing that you had to do, and well done.
Thank you.
And,
Yeah,
know,
it
it's
made
good that we get
logical
it done.
sense when we did the new site plan regulations that this was the next logical step. We're trying to chip away at some of those master plan implementation goals. Once this process finishes, there's already other zoning ordinance amendments that I'm sure we could come up with in the future, but I think the next bite that we're gonna go after is the rewrite of our subdivision regulations so that they're updated as consistently as our site plan regulations are. So that, I think, is the next task that my staff and I will be undertaking.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so as I said, we're opening the public hearing at 8:13, because I said it a minute ago. If there's anybody in the public that wants to make a comment about these changes that we haven't already made or wants to amplify on any of the comments that we've made, please do so at this point. There's a mic in the center there, and we'll get you an answer or a comment. Okay, seeing nobody rushing to the mic. Huh? We'll go- I'm not waiting 10 minutes. I've been arguing about that one for a long time, but I keep losing. We'll close the public hearing at this point. Does anybody else have any other comments, or is there a motion to move?
Mr. Chairman, only because I know that Council Albert, yourself, and Councilor Rothhaus had questions about what was talked about. Normally, I would move it to the consent agenda, but what I would do is move it to a third reading so that if my colleagues had any additional comments, they would be agended accordingly so that discussion could be had. So I would, I would move this to a third reading, Mr. Chairman.
Second?
The motion's been made by Bill and seconded by Nancy to move the changes to the zoning ordinance to a third reading and implementation.
I do have one
Tim.
comment I wanted to make. I know that Counselor Woods had made a comment last meeting during the initial first read, and I have made that change to the section in the telecommunications ordinance.
Awesome. If there's no other discussion, we'll call for a vote on the motion to move it to a third reading before the council. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 6-0-0 to which meeting? Our next regular meeting?
January 3rd,
No, it's the 14th.
14th, okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tim. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Appreciate your time and your thoroughness.
Merry Christmas, thank you, Tim.
Yes, you may leave. No. That brings us to legislative updates from state representatives. If any of our state reps would like to address the council, this is the time to do so.
Thank you once more, Mr. Chairman and councilors. For the record again, my name is State Representative Maureen Mooney. As the House continues to mourn and process the loss of Dick Hinch, I will have you know that the caucus met recently, and we have a nominee for a new speaker, the election of which will be on January 6th. The gentleman's name is Representative Sherman Packard out of Londonderry. He was Dick Hinch's choice for deputy speaker. Committee assignments have been pushed out. We should have them probably by December 30th. Also, bills will soon be published, probably in January. And as was mentioned earlier by Councilor Harrington, in one of the last interactions I had with Speaker Hinch, he appointed myself and Representative Bob Healy to the Commission on the Environmental and Public Health Impacts of Perfluorinated Chemicals. And the hearing, or the meeting that we attended, the first one we attended, has been recorded and is online for those who may be interested in watching it. So with that, I wish you all a happy holiday, and thank you very much.
Thank you, same to you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Representative Mooney. We appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Eileen?
Just one thing, I think that it might be really nice if you have the time to meet with our resident expert on PFAS, Sarita Croce. She works at our wastewater treatment plant, and she is a brilliant woman, and she knows, she can not only talk the talk, but she can explain things to ordinary people like myself, and give you some of the history of what we've been going through. I'm sure you followed it, but it's really pretty. I know I personally feel good that we have been given the opportunity to have somebody like Sarita and our attorney that we use, so that we can fully understand very complicated scientific things. So I would recommend that you speak to her if you ever get a chance.
That would be great, thank you.
Okay.
Also, we have just recently had a meeting with two of our Merrimack Village District Commissioners.
Oh, good, they're
And
great, too.
that was extraordinary as well.
They're very
So
good,
to
too.
add to that would be fantastic.
Yeah, okay.
And we have a couple of pieces of legislation, which I can address at another time, that were driven by citizens or concerned citizens for the water here in town, so we're looking to work with them as well.
Okay, we'll get in touch with you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Just to be able to piggyback on that, during the meeting on December 11th, Don Provencher, who was one of the commissioners, did a presentation that's also available online, which really encapsulates, summarizes all of the various stages related to the PFAS contamination and what MVD has done. It's really a very well encapsulated presentation, so I would encourage anybody who, right, wouldn't you agree?
Oh, without a doubt.
was
And in
really-
fact, he gave the repeat version of it to our Merrimack delegation recently. And we recorded that as well, so we actually got to hear it twice. Just extraordinary in terms of the experience that we have in the Merrimack Village District.
Right.
So completely agree.
And thank you very much for being proactive and getting yourself involved with the various things to catch up on.
Oh, yes,
That's very encouraging, thank you.
true. And these summations, really, of the issue have taken 2 hours apiece. So it just goes to show you in terms of the
There's a lot of
complexity of the issue is quite amazing.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Representative Lynn.
Thanks, Maureen.
Brings up to the town manager's report.
So the planning board has reviewed the town capital improvements plan. We have done this a little bit differently this time in that, in the past, we have had it come before the council first, and then it went to the planning board, and we kind of decided that that was an unnecessary step in the process. The council will obviously hear it, but the planning board heard it. And they will hear it, so they hear it on December 15th and made recommendations to the town council relative to prioritization. The board has not met with the school district to review their capital improvements plan. The planning board also had an informational presentation from MVD on the water treatment to the project for PFAS contamination. The board encourages interested residents to watch part of the presentation. Part of the December 15th planning board meeting on Merrimack TV replays or the Merrimack TV website and YouTube channel. The Exit 11, speaking of our dear Dick Hinch, toll plaza removal has been completed by Busby Construction through New Hampshire DOT, and Dan Dwyer did not have to come up from Florida with a sledgehammer. It was done properly and professionally.
Okay, I've gotta ask, can we get one of those small toll signs and hang it somewhere in this town hall? Come on, it's a piece of
I
our
would love one.
history.
I agree.
Can we hit the state up and get a,
If they haven't been destroyed already, maybe we can. Okay. Any other questions or comments for the town manager's report? Seeing none. Thank you. We don't have a consent agenda for tonight, which brings us to old business. First, we don't have any old business, so first under new business is the High Visibility Mobilization Patrols Grant Acceptance for the Merrimack Police Department submitted by Captain Eric Marquis. The Town Council to consider the acceptance and expenditure of a grant in the amount of $3,400 made available through the New Hampshire Office of Highway Safety for the Merrimack Police Department for, quote, high visibility mobilization patrols, unquote, pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 8-15.
Good evening.
Good evening, welcome.
Eileen, Paul, members of the council, I appreciate you having me here tonight. So as you said, first is the High Visibility Mobilization Patrols Grant, which is in the amount of $3,400. This fund would fund 12 4-hour patrols consisting of Join the Click, which is a seatbelt enforcement initiative, Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over, which is OUIL enforcement, You Drive, You Text, You Pay, which is distracted driving patrols. These mobilizations will be conducted on specific days and at specific times in conjunction with other highway safety partner agencies as a combined enforcement effort. Last year, we conducted 21 patrols, which resulted in 272 motor vehicle stops, 4 arrests, as well as 257 warnings, and 29 summons being issued.
Was that the high visibility one, or was that the distracted driving patrols?
That's the High Visibility Mobilization Patrol grants.
Okay. I thought I saw different numbers, but that's fine. Any comments or questions from the council?
I support these every year. The police department comes up. One thing I noticed in Captain Marquis' presentation was that he was kind enough to put in statistics from the last year from each of these patrols, and it would appear, as it has in the years past, is that the police department is using good discretion by the amount you see between the warnings and summonses and so forth. So to me, I think that this allows us to have an extra police officer on the street, higher visibility, as well as enforcement in those areas we need. So I support each of these grants. Thank you.
Thank you. Finley?
Kevin, have we always had a matching component, you know, the 80-20? Has it always been that?
25%. Yeah.
Oh, is it?
As long as I've, yeah.
Okay, because I'm looking at this one where it says total, it said projected cost 80% federal, 20% applicant. So I don't know.
The match is generally 25%.
Okay. The reason, see, I see it a little differently. I don't generally support these. The one I have supported is the DWI patrol. But the others, I do believe that the click it or ticket, that's obviously under 18 drivers. We're looking for that. And I always prefer it to be an educational thing. And I haven't received a report on our summons versus, for traffic stop violations, how many have turned into warnings versus tickets. It used to be 6 to 8% all the time, and I haven't received that in a few years now, but this one is 11%, so I believe there was wording in there, and I did search for it in the fine print and didn't see it. I saw at one point it said, while we don't say that's the case, later on it alludes to it that it is, but I'm generally opposed to them because I don't want it to be an added force. I'd rather it be an educational purpose. No texting and driving. I mean, it's to give you the heads up of why I generally vote against it and will tonight.
I will say one thing too, that our funding has gone down quite a bit since last year. We went from about $32,000 last year to just over $9,000 this year. That's total grant money. And I was told that the reasons for that is that we have the state received less money from the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
There are more agencies involved, and there are different calculations for the disbursement of the money. So we've gone down quite a bit. The patrols will be a lot less than they were before.
Yeah. What was the last comment you said? They're different. There are more agencies, and there are
new calculations as far as how the money is dispersed.
Oh, okay. I thought
they don't really give us all the information as to how they make those calculations.
That's fine. I didn't want you to say because we're not giving out enough summonses or something like that.
Yeah, no, I was told that it has nothing to do with performance at all, so.
Okay. Good. And the concept of high visibility just means there's an extra patrol officer out? I mean, these are things you check for regularly anyway, right? I mean.
Yeah, but the mobilizations are basically a statewide effort, so we do them all on the same day, at the same time, all the different agencies. That's basically the heading of this grant, so.
But does this grant pay for an officer for overtime, or does it pay for the department to concentrate that day on this click it or ticket kind of thing?
It pays for a specific officer to focus just on the traffic enforcement portion.
Okay. I kind of go along with Finley a lot on these, and Some of them, I'm sure, are very good, and the DUIs and stuff like that are definitely worth getting those people off the road. Anyway. Any other comments or questions by the council? Eileen?
Just as a point of reference, somebody wasn't paying attention behind me and ran right into the back of me last week. So I think that it's very important to make sure that people are not distracted while they're driving, because it could have cost, if we weren't driving the same speed, at least for most of the time, there could have been a significant amount of damage.
Right.
And I notice a lot of young people with the distracted driving, and with all the traffic going through our main thoroughfare, which is practically a highway. I think it's particularly important in Merrimack.
Absolutely, I would agree.
Captain, real quick, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I noticed you tailored these hours specifically for certain times of day, is that correct?
Yep.
Why is that?
Basically commuting hours for the most part.
What hours?
Mostly commuting hours for the most
Commuting
part.
hours, okay, I'm sorry.
Yep, except for the DUI portion of it, those are more the nighttime hours.
Okay, if there's no other questions, do we want to take
Mr.
these?
Chairman, I would move that the town council accept and expend a grant in the amount of $3,400 made available to the New Hampshire Office of Highway Safety for the Merrimack Police Department for high visibility mobilization patrols pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 8-15. And furthermore, town manager or her proxy be authorized to sign the paperwork necessary to accept and expend.
Second?
Motion's made by Bill and seconded by Peter to accept and approve the grant. Any other comments? We'll move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And aye. And any abstaining? None. That passes 4-0 with Finley and myself in opposition. Right? Right. Okay. Number 2 is distracted driving, which sounds like the same thing. So maybe you can help us understand why what the differences are.
Yeah, the visibility mobilization patrols are just done. There's just a handful of those, and those are done, like I said, at specific times and dates in conjunction with other agencies at the same time. So it's basically a statewide effort. The distracted driving enforcement grants is the amount of $2,494. It would fund 9 4-hour patrols during commuting hours. It would focus on distracted and negligent driving enforcement. Last year, we conducted 21 patrols, which resulted in 272 motor vehicle stops, 4 arrests, as well as 257 warnings, and 29 summons being issued.
Okay. Anybody have any comments?
Again, I support this. I think that you look to the root cause of accidents nowadays. I think distracting driving is probably the biggest one. And again, having this grant allows us to have another police officer on the street for those high commuter traffic hours, and to assist those officers that are out doing their patrol work. So ultimately, if you look at it this way, you've got an officer doing various high visibility, distracted driving, whereas these officers might be tied up on calls. Now they're focused on this during high traffic time. So that again is one of my reasons for support.
And this is 9 patrols over a year span, or?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so it's,
Yeah, a big difference from last year. Like I said, our funding was cut quite a bit. So we're down to 9 patrols basically for this grant.
the 4-hour periods during commuting times,
Correct, yep.
which there's not a whole lot of commuting going on, or not as much.
It's down a little bit.
At least I'm not in that list, so. Anybody else have any comments? Or motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the town council accept and expend a grant in the amount of $2,494 made available through the New Hampshire Office of Highway Safety for the Merrimack Police Department for distracted driving patrols pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Chart Article 8-15. And furthermore, the town manager or proxy be authorized to sign paperwork necessary to accept and expend.
Second?
Motion was made by Bill and seconded by Peter to accept and expend the grant as described. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Finley? And any abstaining? So that passes 5-1-0 with Finley in opposition. And you're up again.
Okay. The driving under the influence enforcement grant, the amount of $3,357 would fund 12 4-hour patrols, which would be conducted Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights, as well as some holidays and special events, between the hours of 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., and would focus on DUI detection and enforcement. Last year, we conducted 28 patrols, which resulted in 262 motor vehicle stops, 7 arrests, as well as 259 warnings and 23 summonses being issued.
And this one is $3 less than the other one that has 12 4-hour patrols, right? So I just find that fascinating, that the accuracy that they peg some of these at. But anyway, does anybody else have any questions or comments? Yeah, can I add something?
I will, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I reiterate my reasoning with emphasis. Thank you.
Very good. Any other comments? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the town council accept and expend a grant in the amount of $3,357 made available through the New Hampshire Office of Highway Safety for the Merrimack Police Department for driving under the influence patrols pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 8-15, and furthermore, the town manager or her proxy be authorized to sign paperwork necessary to accept and expend said grant monies.
Motion made by Bill and seconded by Peter to accept and expend the grant monies for the driving under the influence patrols. Any other comments or questions? We'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 6-0-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Captain, we
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Captain.
Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda is a purchase request for a backup dispatch console for police and fire submitted by Chief Brian Levesque, who's not here tonight. Eileen?
About a little over a year ago, in an effort to make sure that there is redundancy for dispatch at a different location than the central fire station, we purchased a backup dispatch console for central fire station, which, you know, can be moved as is put out into the thing, should that we end up with a public safety complex in the near future. So what this is a second seat to that. So the console itself was for one position, and this $29,000 is for a second dispatcher to do the dispatching out of the fire department in the case that something happens at the PD.
Correct. Couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, that's it. In case we have some sort of issue down there, we would be able to move 2 dispatchers directly down to the fire department, and they could still dispatch at the same level. So that's the idea of adding the second chair to it.
So these are just positions, they're not people? You would actually intend to move the dispatch person from the police department building to the fire department building?
To the functioning consoles down at the fire department. If we needed to, we could send personnel down there to dispatch. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and we have one already?
We have one that's ready to be installed. It hasn't been installed yet. So this is another chair they would install both at the same time.
So our philosophy originally was that one would be a great backup.
Great backup, and if the fire department needed to assist in any way, if we had some sort of large call, they could assist as well. But then adding the second chair would be, like I said, we could have 2 dispatchers down there to function, so.
So this will be up and fully functional so that you could have, in fact, 3 people operating at a given time if there was some massive thing going on? Or-
Yes, yep, 2 up here and
And
1
now
down
if
there,
this goes
correct.
in, you'd be able to have 4.
Yes.
So there, it's not mothballed somewhere, it's functionally operational all the time,
Correct,
could be used as needed.
yes.
That adds a little different tilt to it from what I saw before, so I'm glad to hear that.
Yep.
What I just didn't understand what all we were going after before, so I
Yeah.
appreciate that input. Does anybody else have any questions? Finley?
I guess just for clarity for me, it's not so if there's a monstrous catastrophe up here, it's in fact just so we have the ability for extra manpower to jump on a radio if necessary. Because I was wondering, my question was gonna be, how is it gonna impact when we eventually, if we eventually get to our safety complex? It's not taking it off site anymore, it's pretty much gonna be the same building at that point, so I didn't know, if it was for the catastrophe, something bad happened over here and we could have it down the hill, that's different. But if it's in the same building, I don't know that it would be necessary.
Paul?
I think I can answer that question for you, Councilor Rothaus. What would happen is that those 2 stations down at the firehouse would then go into the new building. And in the new building, right now, there's a plan to have an emergency management center. And those consoles would be in that emergency management center. So you would still have the 2 that are in dispatch now be in the new dispatch center. And we'd have an additional 2 that would not be mothballed, that would be functional, that people can go over and use in case of those large catastrophes. So they would be in our emergency management center that would be in the new safety complex as well.
And I think I've missed a lot in the past meetings when we've had these little conversations, because I'm one,
Go ahead.
how often do we get to a point where, put the catastrophe conversation aside, where we've needed extra, dispatch going on? Is it a regular occurrence right now? Do you know?
Probably not, probably not. But
Okay.
this is in preparation for, if something were to happen, so.
I think it's, sorry, Pete. I think that it's like an insurance policy.
Mhm.
It's something that we should have had all along, but
Okay.
we didn't. So,
Mhm.
that's kind of what it's more about.
Great, all right, thank you.
Peter?
And just as a little history, is that we have lost power at the police station, and lost consoles, during one particular storm. And they ended up hitching the mobile command post, but you got a small area here, and now you're answering police, fire, and if it's a snowstorm or weather-related event, you're answering DPW potentially. What I like about this is down at Central Fire, a separate location, albeit you have 2 active stations, consoles ready to go. And as memory serves me, as far as I know, as when I ran dispatch, we had incidents where, very large fire incidents, where fire could get on and put their trained people to handle fire call. Not that our dispatchers aren't, they are, but their knowledge as well, they could assist and alleviate some of the burden from the police dispatchers or the communication center, the main communication center. So, to me, I see this as very helpful. And one of the things I saw in Chief LeVake's memo, supporting information, was that this can be moved. I mean, it's not fixed and it can be moved. So even if we went to, let's say, a public safety building, and we didn't like the idea of the backups being in that same building, we could potentially look for another location to have those as well. Maybe it's at one of the satellite fire stations or what have you. So, I mean, I think it's a great idea. I think it's important to have that backup, and we have lost power at times.
So, Nancy?
You stole my thunder. Because I was thinking of the loss of power, because you're right, that has happened on several occasions. And the other thought was, isn't the computer cloud storage, isn't that a backup? Because we don't trust it just to be in one place on site. So I do see it as a backup that hopefully we'll never need, but is also an insurance.
One other question.
Go ahead.
Captain, if this gets approved and everything, and even if it doesn't, there's still one console down there. Have our telecommunications or dispatchers up at the main communication center, have they all gone down and used those consoles down there and trained on that?
What the fire department has right now?
Yeah.
What they have right now is basically, it's basically a mobile unit with what we have in the cars. It's a small unit. The new consoles aren't installed yet, so they can't train on those yet. But obviously, we would do that as soon as we could get that installed.
Yeah, because I think that'd be great, because them to get down there, just put hands on if they ever need to run down there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Eileen?
Yeah, I think Peter cleared that up in that, or the captain did, that we have not received the first console yet. So they haven't had the opportunity to work on the actual first console. But you better believe that we'll be getting both of them before we pay another $1.
Okay. Any other questions? We must have at some time in the past thought 1 was great, so 2 is better as far as being able to completely staff if we lose power or truck goes through the front window or something like that. And it does become an insurance policy. It's a $30,000 insurance policy, but compared to what it could be if we lost communication, that's probably a pretty small change. But so you're looking for 30,000 plus, or what do we?
Yep, 29,974.50.
So the letter talks about requesting an additional 4,000 from the Communications Capital Improvements Program. Is that a different request?
Let's see.
Second paragraph, last line. From Chief Levesque.
For the furniture to house it.
This is in his memo you're talking, is that?
Yes.
From the chief's memo, yeah, dated October 22nd.
Okay.
Yeah, what he's looking for is $4,000 to purchase
Furniture.
furniture
Yeah.
to house the dispatch consoles.
So it's not 29, it's actually 33,974.50.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we do that, given the agenda item at 29.9? Or do we need to add that? Eileen?
I would just do the 29.9, because I'm not sure that since we wrote this in October, that we didn't already purchase the furniture
unit?
and have not received it yet. So if we need to do that.
We'll come back.
We'll come back.
Okay. So we're looking for a motion to approve the request to spend $29,974.50 from the Communications Capital Improvements Program.
I'd like to make a motion to spend $29,974.50 from the Communications Capital Improvement Program to purchase a backup dispatch console for a second position, to have must be complete, not
Complete.
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 Redundant dispatch center at the Central Fire Station.
Motion made by Nancy, seconded by Lon.
Yes, Paul?
Paul?
Friendly amendment, it's not the communications capital improvement plan, it's communications capital reserve fund.
Capital Reserve what?
Fund.
Well, whoever wrote this, did you write this, Paul? Could I believe
No, I didn't write
somebody
this.
wrote it?
It's Becky's
So
fault.
noted, so change the
Yeah, it
capital,
was my fault for approving it the way it was written, sorry.
so change the Communications Capital Improvement Program to Communications Reserve Fund.
Capital reserve fund.
Capital Reserve Fund. Let's get it straight.
Second approved.
So if there's no further comments, we'll call for a vote on that motion as corrected. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 6-0-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now you
Thanks,
get to
Cal.
go. Thanks, Cap.
And happy
Tell
New
the
Year
chief we
to-
missed him. Okay, so now we come to number 5, a request for the John O'Leary Adult Community Center building improvements, submitted by Town Councilor Nancy Harrington. Town Council to consider.
You sound surprised.
Council to consider the request to share in the cost of building renovation upgrades to the, building renovation/upgrades to the John O'Leary Adult Community Center, JOACC.
Correct.
You're on.
And Paul will probably be able to jump in on this too, but basically, this is a request that has to do with renovating and updating the kitchens and the bathrooms over at the O'Leary Center. As noted by the paperwork that you've received, there is a combination of payments, some of the, right from the John O'Leary Center Executive Board, as well as the town. I do want to note and remind you that in the last 2 years, there's been significant renovations done, which the Executive Board has paid for, and also the town has helped as well. Lighting, exit, electrical changes, painting, speakers, right. And this has to do with some real structural things in the kitchen. The kitchen it's really for the floor. The cabinets are staying, but the floor is rotting. They have to fix it, drain it. And the bathrooms have to be ADA compliant, which they are not now. So they're basically gutting them, doing touchless faucets, those kind of things. Being able to accommodate the elderly, accommodations in the bathroom, those kind of things. So hopefully you will approve. It had been put in the budget for next year, and Paul, you might want to address that. And apparently we're able to do it this year, so.
During the budget time, over the summer, Steve Dembo came to me and asked me about potentially upgrading the bathrooms. And I said, well, since the budget started, that would be a good time to put it into the new budget. And we discussed it, and he came forward in October for asking about $21,000 of the town, and knowing that we had some appropriation savings from some staffing openings that we had, that we did have enough money, that I decided to talk to Councilor Harrington and see if she would like to bring this forward and pay for it this year. The other reason is that since, as we know, we're during COVID, the center is not being used right now.
That's right, which would be perfect.
Which would be perfect, because they can get in there and do their work in the center right now to do these upgrades. And then additionally, I requested that Steve get pricing for touchless bathroom
Correct.
fixtures, and they accommodated that, and they thought that was a good idea, that they go to touchless to help alleviate some of the germs being passed on the handles and things of that sort. So with the timing of it, and knowing that they're trying to reopen the center, hopefully, if all goes well, this spring, to get some of the seniors back, just to have it closed again to do the construction, I felt, in talking with Councilman Harrington, if we had the money this year, to go ahead and do it this year.
One thing they've also recently, the last meeting, last week, they've also purchased air purifying units, 2 of them that they often will use in restaurants, and they've purchased that themselves. And not only is it going to be good for hopefully maybe opening up sooner, but it's a good thing to have in general. So again, they're trying to be proactive and investing themselves into this as well. They're not looking just for the town, but I think they've done a really good job of saving and trying to do things. Yes, Pete?
Yes, Pete.
So-
Nancy, I'm gonna assume, but I don't want to, is that all the new fixtures going in, or Paul, are all gonna be, they're gonna use less water.
Absolutely.
And the one thing when I was reading it was, I saw expenses. These are based on actual bids.
Correct.
Now, does that all all crazy unforeseen expenses included in there? Because we're looking at an old building, and they start ripping open walls and plumbing, so that's the only thing I worry about with that old building, is that, did their bids include the unforeseen?
I can answer that question.
Paul
Yes.
will answer that question. for
We
you.
actually have to re-plumb for the touchless fixtures. We have to change the water lines out and the plumbing lines out because of the touchless fixtures. So yes, it is included in that cost of running new supply lines to the bathrooms and things of that sort.
The great advantage is that the sites that they're working on are on the first floor and they have access from underneath. So, you know, it's not like they were on the second floor, they have to go through walls and ceilings, so. But you know, things happen. Best laid plans, but.
I'm well aware of that. Any other questions or comments?
So I would appreciate your support.
So, this is something that we were gonna bring forward in next year's budget, but we're gonna go ahead and try and do this year because it makes sense due to the fact that the center's not truly open or not open
It's-
100%.
The only thing that's going there is the Meals on Wheels. Everything else is closed.
And the kitchen floor can be replaced
Correct.
underneath
They-
them easily
They can
enough.
accommodate, they've already spoken to them, and they can temporarily move their operations, but can come back.
And it sounds like this is all stuff that really should be done in any case. Having a time period now to get it done
Correct.
just makes a lot of sense, to
Correct.
get it out of the way and not be tripping over each other.
Yeah, if in
at
fact,
any
you know,
age.
if it was next year, you're going to really have to move a lot of the activities that they would normally have out of the way. So timing is terrific. It's one, if there is such a thing as a good thing, take advantage of it, I
Yeah.
guess.
Of the fact that it's unoccupied for the most part. So if there's no other questions, we'll call for a vote to support the town spending $20,975. You're right.
I confirmed that, I looked over at Paul.
I was gonna be very impressed, Finley, but now you just threw it away. So is there a motion to support spending $20,975
So moved.
towards improvements at the JOACC? Peter moved it. Are you you seconding? Moved by Peter and seconded by Lon to move forward with the renovations as outlined in the memo. Is that sufficient? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That passes
The
6-0-0.
Executive Council thanks you.
And you thank us?
Senior who appreciates the center and utilizes it.
And
As to the antiquity of the bathroom.
in fact, I will let the council know, and we should have an open house between all the renovations that have already occurred and the ones that are gonna be done. It's really gonna be really well done. I'll let you know.
Okay.
You want to get number 7 out of the way?
What am I gonna do with this? I think I get one of them. Thank you.
So the question becomes, do you want this presentation to be done by Paul and Tom or by Paul and myself?
Paul and Tom works great for me.
Yep.
I'm sure you'll be there to correct them if they go astray.
You
Point
bet,
of order, do we
yep.
want to get number 7 out of the way?
Everybody has one?
I put it there on purpose, but we can if you'd like to.
Get number 7 out of the way.
Oh, okay.
If you think that's appropriate, we certainly could do
Yeah,
that.
I
You would like to do that. So
I
we're
do,
gonna
Mr.
move,
Chairman.
Paul, we're gonna delay for just a minute and move item number 7 up. Item 7 was added late, very recently. It's a special election request submitted by myself, the town council, to consider requesting the governor and secretary of state to allow the town of Merrimack to hold a special election to fill the vacancy brought on by the passing of Speaker of the House, Richard Dick Hench, who represented District 21, Town of Merrimack, pursuant to RSA 655:81-82, RSA 661:11, and RSA 661:2.
Move approval.
Motion's made by Bill to approve sending the letter. Seconded by Peter. Just to make sure we understand, the requirement is that the town can't hold a special election without approval of the governor and the executive council. And we can't, the passing of Dick Hinch has been confirmed or verified by the clerk's office. And it still needs a request by us to the governor and executive council, copying the secretary of state, in order to get the election approved. The process is that they will approve it, and then there's a period of time, if there's not a town election coming up, that's fairly defined and short, that you have to hold the election. If there is a town election between 80 and 180 days of their approval, which is a significant time, almost 3 months to 6 months, then we can hold it with the town election. I don't totally and clearly understand how it's going to come down, because if there has to be a primary, the primary needs to be held 49 days before the election. The primary would be defined by more than one candidate from any political party signing up for the election. After the filing period is defined, and the filing period will define when the election is, and it kind of goes round and round in circles a couple of times, because I almost read, or I thought I read, that if nobody signs up for the primary, if only one person signs up, then the election is held on the date the primary was supposed to be held. But we want it to be held with the town election. So we need to work with the governor and Secretary of State's office to make sure we can get all that timing in. So we want to get this approved now in order to get it up there and let them get it on their agenda, because I guess the governor gets re-inaugurated on the 6th or something, and the council gets reset on the 7th. Something's on the 6th. Your meeting's on the 6th, and the governor's executive and the executive council get put in place on the 7th. So anyway, that's a way long story explaining why this is on the agenda tonight instead of later.
But it's important for the public to understand, because there has been questions about what's going to happen. So that's relative.
Right, and there will be election. We cannot appoint anybody, we cannot temporarily assign anybody to that position. And so it's gonna be, if all works out the way we plan it, in order to save cost, April, before we're able to fill that seat for Dick. But I think that our representatives will do a good job of letting Dick's wishes be known as they go forward. If there are no other questions or comments?
I think I've been approached by a couple of people in discussion who said, the election was in November, why don't they just go back to who the next representative was, whichever party that garnered the next amount of votes, so that ninth person that got cut off, why don't they just do that? And that was a question I really didn't have an answer for them.
Well, RSA 655:81-82, RSA 661:11, and RSA 661:2 very specifically state that thou shalt have a special election to fill that position.
Thank you.
And it will not be done by just promoting the guy who was next in
And I
line.
just wanted to say that out loud,
And I-
because some folks had mentioned.
Well, you're right.
They have, it's
Makes too
been
much
brought up.
sense now.
Yep, that would be, require some common sense, Peter. So-
And I had somebody call me because he had talked to the folks at the library, and he thought we could temporarily appoint somebody. And there was some miscommunication in the discussion with him and the library folks. He was talking about filling a state position, and so they gave him the right regulations, and he says, but this is a town official, thinking that it's a representative of Merrimack, and therefore it's a town official, but those representatives are actually state officials. And so they go by the state laws, not by the town charter. Town charter would allow us to appoint somebody. The state doesn't allow that. So we're going to request the special election, and I know both the Merrimack Republican Town Committee and the Democratic Town Committee have both contacted me to understand, to keep them informed about what's happening so they can be prepared and do what they need to do to move forward, and hopefully, I'll stop right there. Eileen?
Just one thing, I have a copy for you on letterhead that I gave to you to,
Yeah, it's right here.
for everybody to sign. If you could just do it tonight, we could get it out tomorrow.
Perfect.
Okay. Do you guys want me to read the letter, or you comfortable with,
I'm
it's
comfortable.
a letter to the governor and the secretary of state.
I'm comfortable.
We'll call for a vote.
Just make sure it's added to the record, part of the minutes. You don't have to read it, I'm just saying, just add it to the record.
We'll do that. Lon?
Is it more than one page long?
No, sir, it's 2 paragraphs.
Then I think it would be well to read it so the public is
Okay.
aware of what we're asking.
No problem. This is to the governor and the secretary of state, to RE, a request for a special election vacancy in New Hampshire House, Hillsborough, District 21. Dear Governor Sununu and Secretary Gardner, Town of Merrimack Town Council hereby requests a special election pursuant to RSA 661:8 and RSA 655:81-82 to fill the vacancy created by the unfortunate passing of New Hampshire House Representative Member Richard Hinch, who held the Hillsborough District 21 seat. At a duly called meeting of the Town Council held on Thursday, December 17th, 2020, the Town Council voted to convey this request to your respective offices. It is our understanding that the vacancy in this seat has already been determined by the House Clerk's office, and that a prerequisite to the setting of the special election date is a formal request to do so by the town's governing body. When the agenda of Governor and Executive Council permit it, please kindly take up this request and communicate the chosen date to the town clerk, along with instructions on how to proceed. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, Merrimack Town Council. Lon Woods.
I think you better change the date.
We're not meeting on the 17th. It's the 21st.
21st.
But we can sign this sheet
still
and you
sign
can
it.
I was
take care
gonna
of
say,
that.
It's a separate,
Right.
so we can sign it and just. and change
So
the
we'll make that change.
2
It-
pages.
It's
We'll
dated
sign this.
December 21, but we didn't
And they'll fix
catch
it
the
first.
date on the inside. Thank you. So with that correction, are we good to vote on the motion to send the letter? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 6-0-0. And I'll pass it this way first. You guys can look at it.
Is yours black? Can I borrow it when you're done?
Did you ever see the video of him falling out of his chair?
Now, we were gonna replace that. I've heard that for 6 months.
What are we replacing? The projector?
Yes.
It worked fine earlier. Depends on how you control the controls, I guess.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I've been in the house too long.
How do your remotes at home work? Good batteries.
So,
You're black.
woo-hoo. Flashing green.
Well, too bad, no budget talk tonight. What time is it now?
Oh. Here?
Last time I signed papers like that, I was in the army. I used to have that happen.
Only did it the once though, right?
Say, you need 5 minutes? Good, so do I. We're gonna take a 5-minute council break.
Oh, we're taking a council break.
All right, I can do it. Max, I can do it.
Not that you have to use it.
Okay, Max, all right. I'll keep this short and sweet. The second one in, the second and third one in, those two, yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it. That's it. Well, good evening. Tonight, come before you to discuss the 2021-22 budget. As was mentioned earlier in the meeting, we're going to start deliberations in January over the budget. With me tonight, I have the Deputy Finance Director, Tom Bolin, who helped put together the budget request and the summation of the budgets. And as we move forward, we brought it up to the town manager and we discussed the budget with the town manager. And we are presenting the town manager's budget to the town council tonight. So as people are aware, Merrimack has been budgeting to a tax rate and not to an appropriation for several years now. And part of the budget process is the revenue piece of the budget. Even though the voters don't get to vote on the revenue at the town meeting, they just get to vote on the appropriations. We like to bring forward a complete budget to include the revenue piece to the town council. With that, we have some increases in administrative fees of about $45,000. The administrative fees are we have a enterprise fund, which is our wastewater treatment fund. We have a cable TV fund, which is the media fund. We have the police outside detail account, and we have the revolving fund. Instead of having individual finance departments or finance directors that you may see in bigger cities, in each one of these funds, the general government finance department takes over and does all the accounting, the payroll, the accounts payable. Sharon in human resources does the hiring for those funds. So we get an administrative fee based on budget, based on size. All legal fees come through general government, and then that's all part of these administrative fees that we charge to these revolving funds and self-supporting funds and other things. The miscellaneous revenues are just a balancing act. There's hundreds of lines of revenues that give or take a couple $1,000 up, couple $1,000 down. To balance was $8,000 this year as an increase. Some of the major decreases, the state revenue of $222,000. If you recall, about 2 years ago, we got 2 years of surplus spend down at the state level of total for the town was $444,000. They broke that over 2 years. That ended with the 1920 budget, the budget we're in right now. 2021 budget, I'm sorry. I've got 5 budgets working on in my head right now, so it was the 2021 budget. Sale of property, that's down $45,000. That sale of property was for when we tax deeded homes. And we would sell the tax deeded homes either back to the person or earn a tax deed. We felt that with the economy and the way with COVID and things of that sort, that would decrease that by about $45,000 this year. As you know, we're in the process of looking at the properties that are over 3 years old, and that's where we get some of this money. The properties would be over 3 years old, and the council would take those from the tax collector as tax deeded properties, and usually we sell them back to the individuals who own the home, or they would go out on the auction. But right now, we feel that with COVID and things of that sort, it would be wise to decrease that about $45,000. And then current use, we decreased that by $25,000. Yeah, we do have a lot of big commercial property, not commercial, but residential properties going on in the town right now. However, those are ready to get the project started. They brought most of that property out of current use, so we already received the revenue. Don't foresee a lot of new residential developments occurring that are in current use. We will have residential developments. It's just not coming out of current use to take that. So our net revenue decrease was $238,000. Okay.
Those are just the big ticket items, right?
The big ticket items, yes, yes.
Are you not even, are you talking or thinking about auto registrations or any of that kind of stuff, or?
Auto registrations, at the current moment, we're gonna hit our $5.2 million that we have in there, almost 5.3 million. And from what we've been seeing, with car purchasing and the interest rates being low, that's a good time for people to go out and refinance their leases or buy vehicles, used vehicles or new vehicles. So we think $5.2 million is a good number for this town at this current time. We'll be at 5.2 again next year. And then the only other one is the interest one. And we're hoping that we can use some of our buying power. Matter of fact, today we went to a bank and asked them, if we gave you another X amount of money, what would the interest rate be? And it's almost 60 basis points higher than what we're getting now. So banks are looking to get our money because they want to make money on the loan end. So so we're looking at some of those things. But the interest would be another one that we'd look at, but we would take that back up in fall, a year from now, the fall of '21, to see where we are with the interest rates and looking forward projecting on the interest rates. So right now, we think these are the major ones that we looked at. The rest of the revenues are pretty much in line with where we are right now.
Things like block grants and whatnot, or are we?
Highway block
or
grant.
Hotel rooms and meals?
Rooms and meals were at $1.3 million, and we received 1.3 again. So we're hoping, and of everything that I've heard, we'll be kind of in that same ballpark, maybe a couple $1,000s less or more. Maybe not more, but less of that. So right now, I know that they're not getting their revenues in for rooms and meals. However, people are still going out to restaurants and just taking it as takeout. They're not eating in some of the restaurants and things of that sort. So we're looking at, we have an eye on that. Once again, we'll take a closer look as summer comes around, next August, September timeframe, to see where we're at with that. That's a number usually that we start hearing about in the March timeframe, how the state made it through the rooms and meals and the block grant with the gas tax. So usually in the March timeframe, we start hearing about that, and we'll be making adjustments come the September timeframe when we have to bring our revenues forward. But right now, in this budget, we kind of flatline those for next year as well.
Okay. So it sounds like you're kind of thinking things are gonna head towards normal with the vaccines coming out and stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah,
not very many people staying in hotels right now, I presume, but,
no.
so okay.
But people are going up and skiing. And they're with the snow that we had, it's been, even though there's reservations you need to make, but people are going up to the ski resorts and they are staying up there. So that will help with the rooms and meals as well, because it isn't just rooms and meals in Merrimack, it's
Well,
rooms and
I
meals
understand.
throughout the whole state. I just want the people of Merrimack to understand that it isn't just our 4 or 5 hotels here in town, it's the hotels and the restaurants throughout,
Statewide. yeah.
statewide, so. And the other thing is that if they do, fortunately, we kind of got dumped early in December with snow, and even though the mountains get dumped a lot during the year, if people see snow on the ground in Massachusetts or in southern New Hampshire, they will go up and they'll take the day trips, which means gas and other things they'll eat and things of that sort on the way. So,
Okay.
but that's, we're keeping an eye on it. Just right in this budget, we decided to just flatline it because we are talking, 16 months away before we'll, understand.
Do we generally see increases there, or,
Well,
I mean, so are we, by keeping it the same, are we looking at effectively a decrease from what we might have seen in the past years?
not
No.
really.
Okay.
We get we might get
I think it's very
$5,000-$10,000 increase on rooms and meals year to
Yep.
year, things of that sort. We're not getting huge $100,000 jumps.
Right, okay. Thank you.
So the next side of the budget is the appropriation, and like I said, this is what the taxpayers, the residents of Merrimack, get to vote on. And some of the highlights in the budget are health insurance increases that we talked about, the rates going up to 2.7%, is what our guaranteed max is, and looks like that's where we'll be at. Workers' comp increased. We're looking at capital reserve fund deposit increase. As you recall, when we bought the 2 fire trucks, when we came forward, we asked the town council to start funding an additional $75,000 for the fire department, to be able to buy the trucks on the schedule in their capital improvement plan as it is. That's $95,000. And then the other $20,000 is we are scheduled for a revaluation coming up between 21 and 22. It's going to be around $100,000. Right now, we're about $30,000 shy of the $100,000. We got about $65,000 in there. So by increasing this to $20,000 plus the original $15,000 that we put in there, that'll give us $35,000. So that'll start us off going forward with the revaluation. So those were just really the 2 increases to capital reserve funds that we looked at. Traffic lights and street lights, $15,000. The traffic lights are getting a little bit older, and they have some repairs that be done, and then the street lights are. We found out that even though we went to the new LED street lights, they're more reliable than the old bulbs. So we're finding out that some of the usage is the lights are on, and we're adding neighborhoods and things of that sort. So that's why we increased the street light money. Paving, council made a commitment a year ago or a couple years ago to keep increasing paving. $50,000 in the budget. We put another $50,000 in. Right now, the council's up to $1,440,000 of commitment to paving in the 21-22 year. General insurance was a guaranteed max. Library materials went up a little bit. Office equipment increased. Big increases in solid waste tipping fees of about $84,000. Recycling is going to go up about $54,000. That's because we had the first 3 or 4 months of the year in this current budget year, we had at a lower rate. We had a $55. The rate's really around $95 to $100 to get rid of our recycling. And then our disposal contract ends next December, a year from now. So we're going to start talking with the disposal companies, but it looks like the last 3 discussions that I have had with the company, they have increased about $6, $7 a ton just in the first year of the contract, trying to get them down, but to hedge our bets, we put that in on the disposal cost of $30,000. So trash is going up about $84,000 next year. I would like to talk to you about the employee contributions to New Hampshire retirement system. I did talk to you last time when we came forward, but I think it's important to reiterate that the New Hampshire retirement system for the 21-22 year, these are set by the state, and these are really unfunded mandates for the town. That we are in the retirement system. Employee political subdivision went from 11.17% all the way up to 14.06%, or almost a 26% increase. And those are all our Group 1 employees. That's everybody but policemen and firefighters. Police went up 19.3% to 33.88%. So for every dollar we spend for a police officer, almost 34 cents goes towards the New Hampshire retirement system. And fire is went up 6.35%, and they're at 32.99, which is 33 cents for every dollar we spend. And firefighter salaries goes to we have to match to go to New Hampshire retirement system. Match? Well,
No, we send.
we send.
That's
we
a good
send-
catch. Yeah.
Yeah, we send. Yes.
It is.
So with that being said, compensated absence is a calculation for people who are reaching retirement age, and that's based on not state statutes, but auditing standards, and that's going down $25,000 this year. Union wages, we have 6 union contracts. They're all in contract for the 21-22 year. That's going up about $273,000. This year, we talked about the 53rd week of payroll. That's $278,000.
Can you spend just a moment explaining to people why there's a 53rd week that we have to worry about, and it happens every
4 to 5 years.
4 to 5 years or so,
Right, yeah.
please.
What happens is that the easiest way to explain this is 52 times 7 days in a week is 364. We all know there's 365 days in a year. Every
leap year.
4 years, we have a leap year, which is an additional it's an additional day. So for that leap year, you get 2 days, and then you get 4 years at an extra day. So every like 6 years or so, give or take, you get the 53rd week to bring you back in line. Our fiscal year ends June 30th. So we start on July 1st. Most times, the first week in July is the first pay period. Well, as leap year comes along and days, the first pay period of the year starts to expand, and now it starts halfway between June and July. So for instance, this year, I believe June 30th was like on a Wednesday. So for 4 days, you're still in June for your appropriations and your all other money, but for payroll, you already started your next fiscal year. So basically, the 53rd week is to get that back in sync to being on schedule to be ending your fiscal year as close to June 30th as possible. And every 4 to 5 years, because of the leap year and because of the extra day, the 365th day versus 364, you got to bring your payroll back into line, and it's a one-time cost for those years. I think the last time we did it was about 5 years ago, so we were due for another 53rd week to get us back in line with payroll into our fiscal year end. And it's $278,000 for general fund. The council has said in the last meeting to offset that $300,000 will go in to offset that, use $300,000 of fund balance, and that's one of the reasons why we have fund balances, so that the tax rate doesn't spike every 4 or 5 years and then drastically drops the next year. So we're using that to smooth out that tax rate using the fund balance. So that will be offset by fund balance. The reason why I brought up New Hampshire retirement system before was that I wanted to show you that the rates are what the rates were, because it's $500,000
Additional beyond what we're paying
more
this year.
besides what on top of what we're paying. So it's $500,000 more than what we're paying this year, based on the rates that were presented. And then there are some staffing increases and decreases in the budget. The council made a commitment for 4 firefighters, and the 4 firefighters are around $460,000. Last year, you approved the highway foreman, for the MS4 program for half year.
Before you go beyond the 4 firefighters, that's a fully loaded, weighted cost. That's not just a salary.
No, that is
No.
correct. All these numbers are fully loaded, including, these all numbers include benefits. For the firefighters, that also includes their equipment that they would need in the first year.
The equipment, the retirement system.
Everything.
Everything that
Everything.
goes into hiring somebody. So
Hiring the 4 firefighters, $460. The highway foreman was, in the budget last year, you approved a half year to hire in January for the highway foreman for the MS4. We're just trying to pick up that extra half a year, which is about $45,000. Same thing, you hired 1.5 police officers, meaning you hired 1 police officer in July and 1 in January. This is to pick up the 6 months salary cost of $53,500. We talked about a conservation officer to help with patrolling our conservation lands in the summertime. And looking at the conservation officer, this would be about 28 hours a week, about $35,000 in funds. And then you have 28 hours a week.
For half the year or for the
For a
whole
full year. For a full year, because it might not be 28 in the wintertime total, but you know, if people are out there in the trails and things of that sort, snowshoeing and snowmobiling and four-wheeling and things of that, there's other things this conservation officer can do in the winter months as well. So that's why we budgeted 28 for the full year. Part-time help in the general government office. Same thing, about 28 hours a week. We'll be presenting, when we come forward in January 7th, we'll be presenting the council, a job description of what we're looking to fill. But it's to give help in the office, whether it's helping in human resources or helping one of the people that are full-time to expand into the human resource, to help human resources. But this position would be then backfilling that person's job duties for the part-time hours. So it's really, this part-time person is to give help to the human resource person.
Who's currently swamped. with
Unbelievable.
COVID-19 and every other thing.
Unbelievable. The current employee is, anytime during the day, night, we text or get an email, and she's on it, and COVID-19 is just, with all the new rules and regulations, I'm glad that she's doing it, because it is
As a lesser mind would
ever-changing.
snap, I'm sure.
Yeah, that, and she has it down pat. It changes daily, minute. And it's looking at, okay, well, this person's been exposed, but it's 2 people generation from the exposure, so what does this employee have to do, and what do we have to do, and can they come to work, and when can they come to work, and everything else. So there's a lot that goes in with that. It's very time consuming. And then the one thing is, in last year's budget, you gave the overtime to the firefighters for staffing 9 plus a daytime attendant. And what that does is, when you bring in the 4 firefighters, backing out that overtime, because you're giving them 4 firefighters, they would still staff to 9 plus the daytime attendant. So we're backing out about $109,000. Well, excuse me? 8 to midnight. The day attendant is from 8 to midnight. So total increase is about $1,900,000 of increases. But with every budget, there are some decreases and there are some savings. Short-term disability, unemployment, dental insurance went down $15,000. We are able to take advantage of the vehicle fuel prices and get some pretty lucrative contracts for the town of Merrimack at pretty lucrative prices. Maintenance of vehicles. The majority of that maintenance of vehicles is, as you know, you bought 2 new fire trucks, and we bought 2 warranties on them. So we
When do
bought
expect-
warranties.
When do we expect those to deliver?
Spring, early,
Oh,
in
really?
the spring, yes. May, June timeframe.
Awesome.
So with that, because these are gonna be new vehicles with 100% maintenance warranties on them for 3 years, if it breaks, company, get here, fix our truck.
Yep.
So on things, so we were able to decrease about $20,000, but $22,000 overall. Building improvements, about $99,000. Some of the building improvements that we were able to do was the new lighting upgrade in Town Hall for about $50,000. Council also approved the salt shed roof at the highway garage was $30,000. That makes up the majority of the savings coming from there. Vehicles, police department is able, last year they bought 4 vehicles, this year they're buying 3. Cost has increased and the fit up has increased a little bit, so we're seeing about a $19,500 savings for the vehicle account. Operating supplies have gone down. Elections, we're going from 4 elections down to 1 election, so there's some savings there, about $14,000 next year, and 21, 22. Miscellaneous is a balancing act of about $10,000. Net savings is $218,000, or total general fund increase is $1,691,000.
Finley?
Could you just, you said the salt shed roof, and what was the other building improvement?
The lighting upgrade, the LED lighting for Town Hall. So these are the sheets that town manager has developed going forward. As you can see, they take into account the total expense for each department. We back out capital reserve funds, other capital, sidewalk, road infrastructure. You'll see that the capital fund expenditure column is blank, and that is because DRA has changed the way that we are allowed to report that. If we want to report the capital fund expenditures, we would have to do individual warrant articles, but since the town council is agents to expend, we will be bringing you those forward as we have done tonight and going forward about when we need to take money out of the capital reserve funds, and then, of course, state and federal grants. So operating budget is for general operations, not including capital, roads, or capital reserve, is about $27,559,000 for general fund. We break that out and look at increases and decreases by department.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Paul, could you go back to the prior screen? What are under the road sidewalk infrastructure, you got 2 asterisks that are dangling down there.
That is to say that it includes the $125,000 from the fee on each motor vehicle permit.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
So, right now, if you look at, we could break it out comparing appropriations from year to year, and go through, and these are the increases and decreases. One thing to remember is that these increases and decreases include the 53rd week and the increase for the New Hampshire retirement system. Same thing with capital reserves as we talked about. We talked about assessing, and then we talked about the fire for the 95. And then these are some of the other capital projects that we're planning on doing and not doing. There's some money set aside from the highway equipment. Basically, it's an increase of $19,000, and I had that, but I can't remember what it is at this current time. I know one is that's what they are. One's a flail mower, so that we can do the guardrails, mowing behind the guardrails and things of that sort. And then there's another Exmark mower for $12,000. So about $31,000 is just that flail mower attachment. And we do look at other municipalities. We do look at auction items for some of this equipment from other municipalities to try to see if we can adapt some of the other equipment because of our roadside mower and sidewalk machines. They are getting a little bit older, but we're trying to make them more functional and more usable and extend their life. They're an expensive machine to purchase, and then the attachments are very expensive. For instance, we ended up going out to auction and buying a paying $5,000 for a snowblower chute so that the sidewalk machine can actually throw snow into the big 10-wheeler that we have, so that when you're clearing the sidewalk around the library or other areas, you're not just dumping the snow and just basically it's just the piles are growing bigger around corners and things of that sort. That for instance would go for $35,000, and we were able to get a brand new one that was for $5,000 on a bid and auction. So we do look at auctions to buy this stuff. We were actually trying to buy the flail mower. The reason why I'm saying this is we're trying to buy the flail mower, but for a used flail mower, the price got up to like $15,000 in a matter of 2 minutes and continue to escalate. And for buying a used piece of equipment that you're hoping will be as good as will last, it didn't make sense at that point with $31,000. But that's why the increase in highway equipment there is for the flail mower attachment.
So the one we have is wearing out?
Yes. And then what I like to do is I like to come forward and so there's no surprises when we do bring the capital reserve funds forward to you, is that this is what we're looking at buying. And this is what we're planning on buying in this budget year. Computer equipment. We're looking at a town hall Wi-Fi complex. Right now, if you're in my office, I'm on one Wi-Fi network. As I go to the town manager's office, I'm on another Wi-Fi network. And as the chair and vice chair can attest, when we're on Zoom calls in the town manager's conference room, they're awful because we have no connectivity. sometimes with the Wi-Fi. So we're looking at maybe upgrading that. Microsoft 360, moving away from the licenses, buying the licenses, and actually upgrading to a Microsoft 360 product throughout certain divisions in town. And because our Exchange server is getting older and we're going to have to upgrade, we were thinking about maybe moving to Microsoft 360, and that would be cheaper than having to buy a server and upgrading, but we're still doing some of the math on that. The revaluation, like I said, the library would like to replace a carpet and do some HVAC repairs. There's an ambulance in the capital reserve fund. There's in the fire equipment, there's some computer upgrades in SCBA, the filling station for SCBA. Road infrastructure is basically drainage improvements this year. Highway equipment, backhoe, wood chipper, 10-wheel dump trailer. Solid waste is those big live floor trailers that we have, and a pickup truck and a plow, and then sewer capital reserve funds as well.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Thanks. Paul, regarding the campus Wi-Fi, what is the upgrade, what's the radius going to be of coverage at Town Hall?
That is a project that when we get as you know, our IT person is leaving. When we get our new IT person, that's one of the projects that they're going to have to come up to see how we can secure our information with a Wi-Fi, campus Wi-Fi in this area. We're hoping that it would take in the east wing and the west wing on one network all the way around, so that I don't have to connect up to Merrimack TV's Wi-Fi. So when I get called in or go over with my laptop to the town manager's office, I don't have to disconnect everything to connect up to be on a different Wi-Fi. It's kind of what they did at the police station and then the fire station. They put hubs throughout the building, and so as you walk throughout the building, it just picks up the next hub, it picks up the next hub. So you're not changing your Wi-Fi network. And that's one of the big things is we're looking at being able to go into the town manager's conference room, and if we're on a Zoom call, because there's no hard wire in there with a cable, that we can pick up and actually have a Zoom call that we're not freezing and we're not disconnecting and things of that sort. So, but the radius is I'm hoping for is the whole town hall. But to better answer your question, that's one of the first things the new IT person would have to do.
I guess the larger question is there an opportunity to synchronize our Wi-Fi with also the library and with John O'Leary, so that you have not just campus being limited to Town Hall, but expanding it so that it includes our other public facilities that happen to be in that same space? Or is that beyond your?
That's beyond my realm right now.
Okay, fair
But
enough.
that's something that we could look into with the new IT person.
Okay, thank you.
Well, follow up on the Wi-Fi, I guess I know that, you say when you move from here to there with your laptop, you have to reset. But, I mean, I have my tablet at home. It recognizes my Wi-Fi when I'm at home. And then I can bring it to work, and I've already set it once, so it recognizes my work Wi-Fi, and I don't have to do anything.
That is correct. My laptop will still pick up Merrimack TV in the other building. The signal isn't strong enough, though, in the other building. And vice versa, when I'm in the other building, it'll pick up Merrimack Town Hall, but the signal isn't strong enough when I come back over to my desk here to pick up. So I'm running on a very weak signal, and the bandwidth for Zoom and things of that sort, it just drops. The calls, you freeze and everything else. So it does pick it up, but it doesn't drop it to pick up the just stronger signal. It picks up whatever signal you connect it to. So what I would like to do on this slide is that I want to show you where we'll be at in June 30th, 2022 with the adds and subtracts. And to show that, ambulance will be around $80,000. Athletic fields are about $150,000. There's a project in a couple years, maybe a lighting upgrade at the Martell Field. Communications would be at $170,000, but we're looking at, buying other things in the out years, so things of that sort. So that's where we're looking at with the balances, and I want to give the council the snapshot of what the balances would be at, because it's easy to say, I want to put $400,000 in a fire equipment capital reserve, but, you know, at the end of 6/30/2021, the capital reserve is going to be at $47,000. So we have to build that back up, and there's other needs that they are still needing to buy out of the fire capital reserve. So it will be at 316 at the end of 2022, and we'll be building back that balance back up so we can stay on the purchasing schedule that was presented to the council. And then this is the total appropriation slide where we take the general fund and bring it back down to the grand totals. If we were looking at appropriations only, appropriations from 2020-21 is $45,016,870. 21-22 is $37,301,73. It's a decrease of $7,715,000.
Where were you just reading those numbers from?
Very bottom line, very bottom line.
Okay, I heard different numbers, sorry. Go ahead.
So it shows that we're at $7,715,000 decrease. However, because we had a bond last year of $9.5 million that we're not having this year. So that's why we like to look at the overall tax rate. And next slide is the summary. So we talked about the increase in the general fund appropriations of $1,683,000, the $95,000 for capital reserve funds. Other capital reserve is a decrease of $137,000. Increasing road resurfacing and sidewalks paving is $50,000 plus. Then we have self-supporting funds is an increase of $112,000. And the wastewater treatment bonds, a decrease of $9,520,000. We tie into the $7,715,000. We also look at the revenues, which is $238,000 that we talked about, a decrease in revenue. The fund balance increase of $300,000. The $9.5 million bond, which is a decrease. Self-supporting fund, which is an increase of $112,000, is a $9 million decrease to revenue, $9,345,000 decrease to revenue. Overlay and veterans credits are staying constant, comes to the $1,629,959 increase. In talking to assessing and the assessing department, value right now of construction that's in process now, new construction only. Nothing to do with the revaluation, just new construction, which is the building number 5 up at Gilbert Crossing, the property at Chestnut Hill improvements that they have done, the Executive Park apartments that's there, the clearing and stuff that they're starting at Harris Pond, the workforce housing, just in those areas alone, plus some new building. There's a new development off of Wire Road that additional houses. It's going up about $58 million in value. So taking that into account, increasing the value by 58, we're estimating that the tax rate will be $5.43 or an increase of 37 cents. Some of the pending items are state budget first year. They're in the first year of their biennial budget. We talked about rooms and meals and highway block grant is something we have to keep an eye on. And then this budget does not include any raises for the non-union staff. I like to show this every year. It's like those sand that you get at the up near the beach and stuff. When you flip them over, the sands come back and forth. The red is basically, if you're looking at your tax bill, the red is the school. So the school's around 72%. The next blue is what the municipalities make up of the budget, which is about 21%, and then counties around 5% the top. So the average house in Merrimack for this December tax bill we just got was $261,200. That equates to about $6,285 in taxes. Of that, the municipality gets $1,225, or 21% of your tax bill. The school gets 74.11%, or $4,737, and the county gets $312 of that, or 4.86%. Questions, comments? Yes.
There's a comment. Any questions that we haven't been asking all along?
Thank you. Yes. Yes, we do. In January, the budgets will be here. I have the budget books over, sitting behind Eileen.
Hiding.
But
Hiding behind Eileen.
hiding because of that. But you're right, and in January, the departments, you'll see individual department budgets, and we'll come forward and discuss each individual department budget with the town council and so that the people can see it. But I do want to say that $500,000 was an unfunded mandate by the state right off the bat on this. So,
And that's when our work begins on. Paul's done his work, now our work begins.
Counselor Rothaus and I have been lamenting over that for years now, the unfunded mandate. It's just, it's the albatross that the municipalities have to deal with year in and year out. And it's just,
It's the fact that we just let it go. Shouldn't just let it go.
I agree.
It's not that, I don't think, I think from my perspective, it's not that retirements are not important and all that kind of stuff. It's the way it's been handled and downshifted by the state that's irritating to people, I think.
Yep.
You know, the state created some situation or some requirement and then decided they couldn't fund it, so they just shifted it down to the towns to fund it. And the town hasn't really had a lot of say in what's going on. We just get to pay the bill that gets presented to us. I think that's where the frustration
Yeah,
comes in,
I
more
thank
so
you.
than the concept of retirement. I mean,
Eileen.
I
No.
can't, I have to say it. You know, my colleagues from other municipalities jump all over me when I say this, but I have been in this business for 30 years. And what really angers me about all of it is that we are paying now for a medical subsidy. All right, that was something that was enacted by the legislature because there was extra money in their subsequent accounts. So we have two different groups. Each one has two accounts. One is for the retirement. One is for, used to be cost of living many, many, many years ago. So any interest earned on the first one over a certain amount went into the second one for the cost of living, et cetera, et cetera. Well, back in the 80s, the interest rates were 15% or whatever it was, and they were able to provide this very worthy benefit to the police and fire for a medical subsidy. And when they ran out of money, they decided that we would pick that tab up, and they keep pushing that forward. It was only supposed to be for a certain number of years. As you can see also, they had so much money in the regular employees that they had 1 year where they offered it to everybody, and now we're paying for it still. It was 1 year. And that's the thing that bothers me the most, is the medical subsidy. I will say that maybe 10 years ago, they made some significant changes to the retirement system so that some of the, overtime and all those kinds of things didn't get added back in. But again, that wasn't the employee's fault. That was the retirement system saying that's how we calculate it, and that's how we calculate it, and that's what they did. So it takes a while for that to change and, to move along. But anyway, the medical subsidy thing really bothers me. And when I wrote something on the manager's listserv about that, They claim that my recollection of 30 years is not correct, and that it wasn't a small amount of money, which I pointed out to them. $160,000 a year is not a small amount of money. So,
Who gets
just
the sub-
saying,
Who gets the subsidy?
the police and fire departments.
Well, because they show an increase on the employee political subdivision or whatever.
Yes, there was 1 year, as I said,
Well, that's-
they
yeah.
each group, so group one also had that other account. So when the interest rates went up and more money kept accumulating into this other account, they wanted to spend it down. So they said one year, I think it was, maybe 2 years, they said, okay, we're gonna offer the medical subsidy to group one for that 1 year. And we're still
So
paying
these are
for it.
people who are retired who are paying.
They've
for
already
it.
retired, yeah.
2004, 2005, because that was when I first started with the town, and I remember people in the group one retiring because they
Yeah.
would get the medical subsidy.
The teachers, I remember, used to get the subsidy, and in '08, I believe, is when it stopped, because a lot of people decided, I'm gonna retire a couple of years early, because it's beneficial to do so. So that, I get it, it's for those who have retired, because nobody's getting it today, except, police and fire.
Yes.
You know, again, the towns and school districts were paying a tiny percentage at first,
Mhm.
and the employees were paying a large percentage,
Right.
much more. I mean, we used to pay like 2%
Well,
for,
the state paid a big hard
well,
loss.
no, I mean, just for like Paul and I and Tom. We'd pay, the town would pay 2% for us. Now it's 14%.
Yeah.
So they didn't pay their fair share. We didn't pay our fair share at the beginning, and now we're kind of catching up with it.
Actually,
In
I
my
think we
opinion,
did.
mismanagement
Right,
of the retirement system.
right, because we did pay the appropriate amount. Now we're paying for their mistake.
And then,
for
you know,
the next
and-
8 or 10 years. or
And
whatever.
health insurance was probably $10,000 or $8,000 for a family plan. Now it's $27,000. Not to say that police and fire are getting any $20,000, they're not. But there's a big difference, and I don't think when they originally brought that up, that they would think that health insurance could ever reach that crazy number. But anyway. Somebody
Don't
ne-
even start there.
Somebody should,
Like
Get in
personal
there
income
and
taxes would never
clean.
be greater than 1%, but anyway.
yeah,
Or half a
Somebody
percent, or
should-
whatever the number was they said originally.
do something about it, but nobody seems to care.
So I just wanted to say I came in underneath the time that I was allotted.
Anything over 10 o'clock was not your fault. That's right.
Yeah. One last thing.
Not for long.
In all seriousness, Finance Department, Tom, has spent a lot of time looking at the wages every year, but I want to just bring that out. We calculate all the wages for the departments. So it isn't department looking at, oh, this police officer. No, that is, we look at every single person that is employed as of this date, and we calculate where they're going to be, either if they're on a step, or if they get an increase, or where they're going to be next year at this
So
time.
projected.
So we're projecting, so we do all the projections for salary, benefits, and so you'll see a constant amount for not retirement, but a constant amount for health insurance and dental insurance and life insurance and short-term disability. We present those numbers and we calculate those numbers. We send them out to the departments for verification purposes, and then we calculate them to make sure that they're where they're at. So we're not taking somebody who, for instance, gets a step in January, and we're not saying, oh, they get that step July 1st. No, we actually calculate 6 months at this rate, 6 months at that rate. This is what a blended rate for their rate of pay is moving forward. So, but I just want to make that clear. And then like, when we talked about vehicle fuel, we talked about insurances, general insurance. We do a lot of calculation, postage. What else do we do? Oh, lights, electricity, utilities, natural gas, sewer. That all comes from the finance department, and that's across the board in all these departments. Cell phones is another one that we calculate and send it out to the departments. So if a department looks and says, well, I don't know, I gotta ask them, it's because we in finance calculate it and sent it to them, we explained to what it is, but we do all the math and we have all that information for you. So, I do have budget books for you, and I know you got a couple of things left on the agenda, and I do have flash drives, so after the meeting, please come over behind Eileen and get your book and your flash drive. Thank you.
One at a time. Okay, any other questions?
Good job, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks for the bad news, Paul.
I do
I
want to
was
say
trying not
that,
to say that.
I had nothing to do with this year's budget at all.
I had a lot
Still
of
says it's the town manager's
No,
budget.
I'm kidding.
we had a lot of heartburn coming forward, and you know, I think when we first talked, it was, when I came in the beginning of November, it was significant. It was 55 cents. So we have done some work to get it down to 37 cents.
Absolutely.
So,
And Tom, just one thing. So, the only thing that I'd like to point out to you is that there's an awful lot of scrutiny that goes on between when the department heads give you their budget, give Paul and now Tom their budgets. You'll see well over $1 million cut out from department head's budget before you see it. So you're not faced with, you know, extravagant expenses from various departments. We had, you know, this year, Paul and Tom went through it themselves and did a really nice job with cutting out the thing. But, you know, as you know, you have two expenses, 4 firefighters, and retirement is $1 million.
Right.
So, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Paul.
Paul.
Thank you, Tom.
And thank you, Tom.
Yep.
Even though you didn't say anything. We know you were the force behind it all. I'm sure, and we appreciate it. Approval of the minutes from the following town council meetings. We have November 19th,
Seconded.
moved by Lon and seconded by Bill. Are there any changes, corrections, additions, deletions?
I had nothing.
We'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 6-0-0. The minutes from December 3rd,
So moved. Seconded.
moved by Lon and seconded by Bill. Any changes or corrections, et cetera?
We're good, Mr. Chairman.
Good. Nobody? Calling for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? 6-0-0. Comments from the press, comments from the public. It's your big chance. Comments from the council. Huh? Oh, okay. Comments from the council. Bill?
Very quickly, Mr. Chairman, to the members of our Jewish community, I hope you had a very happy Hanukkah. And to the rest of the Merrimack community, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Please be well and be safe. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Peter? I didn't go on.
I was thinking about, as we reflected on Dick at the beginning of the meeting, and I don't know if the discussion's already been had and I just wasn't aware, but I know in the other meeting room, we have on the wall pictures with a brief synopsis of their lives, notable citizens of Merrimack. And I thought that Dick, having been elected as Speaker of the House, I think that's a worthy honor for him, is maybe his photograph be hung there and, you know, a brief synopsis, much like we have other notable citizens. So, I mean, I'd recommend that. I'd like to see that. I don't know if we just do it or we vote on it to do it. I don't know how that works.
I agree.
Paul?
those pictures were brought forward by the Heritage Commission and Jackie Flood, and they were the ones doing the pictures in the memorial room. I believe in the naming policy and the policy that the council enacted a couple years ago that talks about that as well. So
We can look
So
into it.
You can look
and
into and do
see.
whatever you want, and if you want, you know, you can do whatever you want, but it's Anita and the
Those are
Heritage.
guidelines.
Those are the guidelines, so I just want to let you know.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's true.
So we should look into whether that's reasonable and meets the guidelines and all those things, unless somebody disagrees.
I agree.
Good
Okay.
idea, Pete.
We'll assign that to the town manager's office to proceed forward on.
With the lousy Wi-Fi.
With the, not forever.
Yeah, you notice how quickly, you notice when that transition is happening? We get the new Wi-Fi? On my way out the door.
Yeah. Well,
She
you
had
could
to
stick
remind us
around.
of that, didn't she, huh?
Yes.
She couldn't go one meeting.
Ron?
Yeah, I agree with Peter's proposal. And I don't believe town council actions need be dictated by another commission in having accomplished what they have, and they've done it well, and they've done it cautiously, and they've been very good at it. But I think this is an occasion where maybe a town council has something to say for itself. Thank you.
As has
And,
been
oh,
pointed
by the
out,
way-
we can change the policy if we want to, and so we can do
While I
what
have
we
it,
feel.
I wish everyone
A jingle jingle.
to still believe in whatever they believe in this holiday season. Merry Christmas, and you've all done very well.
And Happy New Year.
Anybody else? I would just warn people to be careful and don't slip on the ice.
Yeah.
Whether you're throwing snowballs or whatever you're doing, be careful, because you might dislocate a shoulder or something stupid like that. Otherwise, COVID-19 is still with us, folks. As you've noticed, we're trying to be cautious and careful. We're trying to wear masks when we can. We're not having to speak or something like that. We're staying distance. We're asking you to do that as well. Thank you, Lon. And we will continue to work our way through this as hardy New Englanders do. So thank you very much for your attention, and we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Bill to adjourn, seconded by Nancy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstaining? That passes 5-0-0. For the record, Lon has left after 10 o'clock and missed the adjourning vote.